Welcome to a Alt-Shift-X livestream to discuss House of the Dragon Season 1, Episode 6. We're going to talk about the episode, we're going to answer your questions, we are not going to spoil future episodes, and there is so much to talk about today. Welcome to the Year of the Red Spring. That's what they call it in the books. There's a year after 10 years of not a whole lot happening. There's 1 year where everything starts to go terribly wrong, and this is the beginning of that. We had the death of Laena Velaryon, the wife of Daemon Targaryen. We had the death of Lord Lionel Strong and Harwin Strong, Breakbones, the family of Larys Strong. And we've got more conflict happening between the children of Alicent and the children of Rhaenyra, and shit's starting to get real. Welcome to the live stream. I've got the family tree up here because I want to clarify who's who. We've jumped forwards in time by 10 years. A bunch of the actors have been replaced and recast to older versions of themselves, and I'm sure a lot of people are a bit confused about who's who. So Rhaenyra and Laenor got married 10 years ago in the previous episode, and they've had 3 children, ostensibly, Jacaerys, Lucerys, and baby Joffrey. And supposedly these are the children of Laenor and Rhaenyra, but really these are the children of Harwin, Breakbones, Strong, and Rhaenyra. Which is a little bit of a problem, because Jacaerys and Lucerys and Joffrey are the heirs to the Iron Throne after Rhaenyra. And when you have bastards of false parentage in line to the throne, you get disputes. It's a lot like when Cersei and Jaime Lannister in Game of Thrones had their bastard twincestuous children, Joffrey, Myrcella, and Tommen, and they were in line to the throne, and that resulted in some problems as well. Although, if there's any, Joffrey-like character in the show, it's probably Alicent's children, isn't it? Because Alicent and King Viserys have now had 3 children, Aegon, Helaena, and Aemond. And in the words of Alicent's new actor, Olivia Cook, they're all weird. They're all bloody weird. Aegon, we saw masturbating out a window. He just wanted to get a bit of sunlight on his bits, I guess. Aegon, we saw masturbating out a window. Was that the same window that Tommen commits suicide out of 170 years later, or was that a different balcony? We saw Aegon, and he is Alicent's firstborn son, and I love how he doesn't care about the throne that Alicent wants him to have. And then Helaena is like a weird bug girl. Helaena, we saw playing with a millipede or something, and she had a box full of scorpions and things, and Alicent's just like, man, my daughter's weird. And then Aemond is like the younger boy, and he's the only one who doesn't have a dragon. So let's do a little dragon accounting, shall we? Who are the dragons in the story right now? Here they are. So Aegon Targaryen, the firstborn son of Alicent and Viserys, has Sunfire. They mentioned Sunfire in this episode. Laena has or had Vhagar, the biggest dragon in the world. Helaena has Dreamfire. I think they mentioned that Helaena has Dreamfire. Rhaenyra has Syrax. The boys Jacaerys and Lucerys have Vermax and Arax, like we saw these young dragons that the kids have now. And we saw that... well, another one here is that Baelor Targaryen, the child of Laena and Daemon, Baelor Targaryen has a dragon, but Rhaena Targaryen, the other child of Daemon and Laena, does not. Which I think is an interesting dynamic, because that is sort of... that fits with the book lore, but they don't really explore that, but it kind of makes sense as a thing in their relationship. Baelor does have a dragon, but Rhaena's dragon egg didn't hatch. And so there's this sort of jealousy or feeling left out that Rhaena feels. She feels like she's not accepted as much by her father because she doesn't have a dragon, which is all interesting dynamics. So yeah, there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot going on. So let's get into it. Thanks for the super chat from Inquisitor, who says, I really didn't like Laena's death. I don't get why she decided to burn herself. It felt like pointless shock value. Yeah, I also have mixed feelings about the death of Laena Velaryon. how did that go down? So, we saw Lena was very pregnant. She was in Pentos with her husband Daemon. And when the birth started happening, it went badly, like births tend to do in House of the Dragon. And so then Lena, like knowing that she was going to die, decided that instead of just dying in the birthing bed, she wanted to die like a Valyrian. She is Lena Velaryon. She is the blood of the dragon. She doesn't want to die in the birthing bed like Emma Arryn did. And so she decides to go out and command her dragon Vhagar to burn her to death, which is incredibly metal and incredibly dark and shocking. It is sort of based on what happens in the books. Like, the books say that Lena Velaryon just died in childbirth. But it says that, like, as she was dying, she went out to try to ride her dragon Vhagar one last time before she died. So, she did have that desire for a dragon. And it reminds me of, like, one of King Jaehaerys's children called Daenerys Targaryen. It's a different Daenerys Targaryen. But she was dying of a disease called the Shivers. And when she was dying, her father, the old King Jaehaerys, said, "She must get her a dragon, get her a dragon. She must have a dragon." And it's sort of this belief or this implication that Targaryens, like, their connection to their dragon can make them stronger and might save them from death. Or, like, there's a feeling that it sort of might restore a Targaryen. So in the books, I think there's the suggestion that, Lena, in the books, when she's dying of childbirth, she goes out to a dragon and she wants to get strength from her dragon. But in this case, she goes out to a dragon to die. And I think that, it's such a dark thing, but it kind of fits with the idea of, like, Targaryen, or rather, Valyrian self-destruction. Like, there's this idea that Targaryens are just fire. They are destructive, not only to the people around them, but also to themselves. And so self-destruction of someone who is of the dragon blood makes a lot of sense to me. And it also is so gorgeous that we got to see Vhagar. And I loved Vhagar's reluctance to kill Lena. Like, Lena kept saying Dracarys, Dracarys, and Vhagar kept refusing to kill her master, which I think speaks to their connection, And Vhagar, of course, is such a wonderful monster, oldest and biggest dragon in the world. Used to be the dragon of Queen Visenya Targaryen, who conquered Westeros alongside Aegon. Vhagar burned the crap out of Dorne for years and years after the death of Rhaenys and Meraxes. Vhagar has fought in many wars, and now is very sort of old and sleepy, kind of begrudges being dragged along with everyone's new wars. But yeah, my god, it's amazing to see Vhagar. Razieth in the live chat says, "I'm not a fan of her death, but I understand. She wanted to die like a dragon rider and wanted to take her own agency." Yeah, I mean, there's definitely that idea of, like, women being frustrated with the perils of biology, and wanting to take some agency over that. Fits, I guess. I got some sort of mixed messages with fire in this episode, because, like, there was, like, this air show, this wonderfully ridiculous air show where Daemon and Lena flew their dragons over Pentos just as entertainment for the Pentoshi below them. And, Daemon was, like, riding his dragon without any hands, and then Lena got Vhagar to, like, do this burst of flame. And then Daemon flew Caraxes through the flame, which is like, wouldn't you die? Because, like, it's confusing because there's this idea in the original Game of Thrones show where Daenerys was fireproof on, like, several occasions in Game of Thrones. Daenerys survived being immolated in fire. In the books, Daenerys is not fireproof, but in the Game of Thrones show, she is, apparently. So it's like, so when Daemon, like, flew through this fire and was unscathed, I was like, well, are they saying that Daemon Targaryen is fireproof? Is that what's happening? But then Lena died of fire with Vhagar. So it's, I don't know. I feel like that might confuse people. As far as I can tell, the only person who's fireproof in the Game of Thrones show universe is Daenerys, not anyone else, as far as I can tell. So yeah, that was really intense. Lena's death. Thanks for the super chat from Alex, who says, is it possible that Jacaerys is the child of Criston Cole and Rhaenyra? Yeah, so Rhaenyra has these 3 children, and 2 of them are these boys, Jacaerys and Lucerys. And they obviously do not look like Rhaenyra Targaryen or Laenor Velaryon. They look a lot more like Harwin Strong, who is their like actual father. And one of the interesting sort of changes that the show introduces is this idea that, you know, Rhaenyra had sex with Criston Cole, and then Maester Melos brought Rhaenyra moon tea. And we don't see if Rhaenyra drinks the moon tea or not. So I guess it is possible that Jacaerys Velaryon, Rhaenyra's firstborn child, is actually the son of Criston Cole. I don't think that's what they're going for, because like Jacaerys and Lucerys look so similar. They look like they have the same father, and the father is Harwin Breakbones. I don't think they're going for the idea that Criston Cole is secretly Jacaerys' father, but like it's an interesting idea. I don't know if the timeline adds up. Like I don't know if Jacaerys is meant to be 10 years old. I don't think we'll benefit from doing the math, but yeah, it's an interesting idea. I like the idea that Jacaerys might be Criston Cole's son. I don't think it's true, but I think it's a fun, interesting idea. I also I really enjoyed this opening sequence where Rhaenyra gives birth to Joffrey Velaryon, and immediately after giving birth, she's forced to make this walk of shame because Alicent demands to see Joffrey Velaryon immediately after his birth. And, you know, seeing the sort of biological grisly details of the childbirth followed immediately by this walk through the court where they're all gawked at by all the courtiers and all the lords and ladies. And I think just that visual contrast between the intimate, bloody, physical moment of childbirth and then the sort of fake public court life. Because I think this whole show in so many ways is about the sort of conflicts and the juxtaposition between political appearances and sort of real personal bloody realities, you know? One of the ideas they talked about constantly through this episode was the idea of eyes and the idea of seeing things and blindness. Like Helena with her bugs was saying that this bug is blind, it can't see anything. And they were saying that, Viserys is willfully blind because everyone is sort of expected to pretend to not see that Jacaerys and Lucerys are Harwin Breakbones' children, and Rhaenyra needs to sort of push this lie that her children were fathered by Laenor. And Alicent feels like she's being gaslit. Alicent is hey, it is so obvious that Jacaerys and Lucerys and Joffrey are the bastard children of Harwin Strong. She's breaking the rules and no one's acknowledging it because Viserys just wants to pretend that everything's fine. Viserys just wants to believe that Rhaenyra is going to take the throne, there's going to be no conflict, but everyone is being willfully blind to the inevitable conflict that is coming down upon them. And Alicent is this is crazy. Alicent feels like she's the one person who's saying the truth and no one is listening to her. And I think that works because Alicent is someone who has always followed the rules, but and you know, all of her power and all of her sort of identity is tied up in following the rules of this power structure. So she's furious when Rhaenyra openly breaks the rules and gets away with it. And Alicent hates the unfairness of that. And I think again, her color being green, her envy of Rhaenyra is a huge part of this. And I thought it was so interesting that at the small council, Rhaenyra got up and said hey, let's fix this. I will marry my firstborn son and heir to your daughter Helena. Let's fix this conflict. Let's unite our houses. And Alicent said no. So Rhaenyra's well then fine. I'll go off to Dragonstone. But I feel that really gives Rhaenyra the moral high ground. Rhaenyra offered peace. Rhaenyra offered peace and unity to Alicent, and Alicent said no. So I feel Alicent seems more like the villain here than Rhaenyra. But also, Rhaenyra was catastrophically dumb, honestly, by having 3 kids with Harwin Strong. I mean, it's like Alicent said, like, one bastard child would be one thing, but having 3 is an insult to us all. Like, if Rhaenyra and Laenor just had at least one child, at least their firstborn child, if at least Rhaenyra's heir was the trueborn child of Rhaenyra and Laenor, everyone would be a bit safer. But Rhaenyra's catastrophically bad decision to have 3 bastard children with Harwin creates so much disruption and potential for conflict in the royal family. So I guess that is how you could take the perspective that Rhaenyra is more to blame for all of this. So, I mean, tell me in the chat, do you think that Rhaenyra or Alicent is more the villain here? And I mean, I guess the elephant in the room is that Larys Bloody Strong is the villain here. So in the books, the deaths of Harwin and Lionel in the fire at Harrenhal, it is ambiguous. Some people say that Daemon killed Lionel and Harwin at Harrenhal so that, like, Daemon could remove his rival for Rhaenyra's affections. And some people say that Viserys started the fire at Harrenhal to kill Harwin to end the rumors about the parentage of the children. I think Otto Hightower is suggested as the person who started the fire so that he could become Hand again. But in the TV show, they're saying that Larys Strong started the fire so that he could remove Lionel Strong, so that Otto could become Hand, so that Otto could support Alicent. But also, like, Larys killing his father Harwin and killing his father Lionel and killing his brother Harwin, that makes Larys the Lord of Harrenhal. That means that Larys is now the leader of House Strong. So Larys is not only doing Alicent a favor, that's how he sees it anyway, but he's also making himself a lord of the biggest castle in Harrenhal. So he's making himself more powerful. And, like, I love how Alicent says, dude, that's crazy. I did not want you to murder Harwin and Lionel. She's saying, I did not want this. But Larys said, yeah, you do. Yeah, you did. So, like, Larys is sort of dragging Alicent into villainy. Like, Larys is almost making Alicent culpable for the deaths of Lionel and Harwin. So he's almost, dragging her along with him into the darkness, I don't know, I thought that was really crazy. Jim Filbert in a super chat says, is suicide by dragon a thing ever in the books? I can't think of any examples of someone commanding their own dragon to kill them. No. I mean, some people have done some suicidally stupid things to get themselves killed by dragons, but not, like, by command. I mean, if I was to write a little bit of fanfic, the way I might have done it wouldn't it be cool if Laena, like, goes out to Vhagar and knows that she's gonna die? What if, instead of, like, commanding Vhagar to burn her, what if she just went on one last flight on Vhagar? Like, what if she climbed onto Vhagar's back, they flew up into the air, and then Laena just sort of allowed herself to slip off Vhagar and fell to her death? Would that be cooler? Would that be less cool? I don't know, because I feel like the flight itself is always what is beautiful and fun about the Dragon Rider connection. And I think a flight on Vhagar is what Laena wanted in the books specifically. And allowing herself to sort of slip off gracefully, I think, would have this sort of tragedy to it. But, I mean, it is a lot more pointed and a lot more shocking and a lot more intense to look death in the face and to command Vhagar to burn her. That's a lot more dramatic and direct as well, I guess. Thanks for the super chat from Ash Nightable, who says, is the stat about half of dragon eggs not hatching anywhere close to real? I remember Euron not being able to hatch an egg, but that's about it. There's not a lot of statistics about dragon egg hatch rates in House of the Dragon. This is not Pokemon. We have not got the RNG laid out for us in the books. They don't say. There's a lot of ambiguity about exactly, like, who gets dragon eggs, when do the eggs hatch. But I like how they did explore that, because I liked how we had that conversation between Laena Velaryon and her daughter Rhaena, where she was saying, well, like sometimes this works in different ways. Sometimes the egg is in your cradle and it hatches and you bond with the dragon hatchling, but other times you claim a dragon when you're older. So in the same way that Lena didn't bond with a dragon hatchling, she instead claimed Vhagar when she was older. Apparently there was a deleted scene originally where young Lena bonded with Vhagar, but they removed the scene for some reason, which is unfortunate. But yeah, there's more than one way to get a dragon. But one of the important rules to keep in mind is that no human has ever bonded with multiple dragons. Like Viserys rode Balerion the Black Dread, but then Balerion died and Viserys never bonded with another dragon. Dragons can bond with multiple humans because dragons live longer than humans, but humans only ever bond with one dragon. Thanks for the super chat from Philippe, who said, what did you think of the portrayal of Larys? He seemed more subtle last episode. I like the change. Yeah, well, I feel like Larys is not subtle now. Like, in the books, it is never clear, like, what Larys wants or what exactly Larys did and did not do, what game he's really playing. Whereas here in the show, they're really, like, shoving it in your face that he's the guy who did the murders. And, I guess that makes sense. Like, they're trying to tell us what's going on. They're trying to remove some of that ambiguity. I kind of would like it if there was more subtlety, but as I said, I do love his relationship with Alicent, where it's like, is she using him or is he using her? I guess that's a bad thing if it sort of takes away Alicent's agency. Like if Larys just does evil things on Alicent's behalf and she just goes along with it, it's like, well, what is Alicent even doing here? But I guess she's choosing to keep him around. Like Alicent could dismiss Larys at any moment. It was cool to see Larys in the dungeons. We saw Larys recruit these death row prisoners to be his tools in this fire. It's kind of funny that he also gives Larys gives the prisoners this little, is that like a scarab beetle or a cicada? He gives them this little bug sigil, this little pin to identify them as his minions, which seems like a very bad idea when you're doing a top secret arson murder job, right? why would you want your catspaws to be wearing your symbol? That doesn't really make sense, but it's a visual thing for the viewers to say that bug is like Larys's symbol. I mean, Larys is so reminiscent of Littlefinger with his Larys, with his mockingbird sigil, very similar. And of course, Larys talks about the curse of Harrenhal, because there is this history of houses going extinct. Anyone who has Harrenhal soon loses it. Harrenhal has such a dark history because Harrenhal was built by slave labor by Harren the Black, and thousands of Riverlanders died in its construction, blood in the mortar. And then the day that Harrenhal finished completing Harrenhal, Aegon the Conqueror landed on Westeros, and all of Harrenhal's evil work in building the castle was immediately pointless because Aegon the Conqueror came and burned him. And so it's a sort of like an Ozymandias testament to the futility of human hubris that we build these giant monuments, but they don't last in the way that we want them to. Thanks for the super chat from Nefraret, who says, I'm such a big fan and you helped me get through all my work days. I was so impressed with the episode. Thanks, Nefraret. Thanks for the super chat from Anthony, who says, how does Aemond not have an egg, but the baby does? Do they only get eggs from their parents' dragons? Well, there was like an interesting conversation where there was a funny bit where Rhaenyra was like, oh, and like we will give Alicent and her children some dragon eggs. Like she offered for a marriage between Helaena and Jacaerys, and she also said, and we'll give you some dragon eggs. So I guess it sounds like maybe Alicent's faction don't have as many dragon eggs lying around. I think the implication is that a lot of the dragons and the dragon eggs are on Dragonstone But also there'd be some at the Dragon Pit. Yeah, maybe most of them are at the Dragon Pit. Yeah, it's not exactly clear who has dragons and who doesn't. But like maybe what happened with Aemond was that Aemond was given a dragon egg when he was in the cradle, but that dragon egg didn't hatch. Because like Lena told us this episode that only 50% of dragon eggs hatch. So maybe just like with Rhaena Targaryen's dragon egg not hatching, maybe Aemon's dragon egg also didn't hatch. And yeah, it was a really funny moment when Aemon's brother Aegon gave Aemond a little pig with some wings on it, the pink dread, to mock Aemond. And I was a little bit surprised, but I quite like that, you know, Aegon bullies Aemond as much as Jacaerys and Lucerys do. So like it's not just, you know, Alicent's children against Rhaenyra's children. Aegon is just a dick to everyone, and I thought it was so funny when Alicent came and, you know, Aegon was masturbating out a window, and Alicent was saying, "Hey, you are the king. You will be the heir." And he's like, "Oh, I don't care. Like, whatever. I just want to, like, masturbate out the window, Mum." And she's like, "You need to be serious about this." And it's great because it's like, we see how the parents are pushing the kids into conflict. Like, the kids don't want this, but they are being trained to fight each other. They are being given these weapons of war in the dragons, and they are being trained to fight against each other by, like, Criston and Harwin. And we see, like, you know, the adults are modeling the conflict that the children copy. You know, like, Criston goads Harwin into beating him up as a way to sort of reveal Harwin's connection as the parent of Jacaerys and Lucerys. But we see how the kids are just learning the conflicts and inheriting the conflicts and the grudges from their children and being given dragons. And it's like they're just setting it all up. But, you know, again, that theme of blindness this episode. Everyone is like turning a blind eye to the conflict that they are creating. And Alicent feels like she's the only one who sees it. And I guess Rhaenyra also feels like she's the only one who sees this. But Rhaenyra needs to keep the parentage quiet, you know? So, my God. Thanks for the super chat from Among Us Law, who says, "Do the Maesters parallel the Bene Gesserit?" So the Bene Gesserit are a faction in Dune who are like these manipulative witches who use like body control and mind control and genetic manipulation to control the universe. And the Maesters are not that badass. The Maesters are not as powerful as the Bene Gesserit. The Maesters are kind of like crotchety old men who's, you know, they've got limits and biases, and, you know, like, some people see the Maesters as having like a big sprawling conspiracy. It is ambiguous. I mean, like, personally, I think that the Maesters, you know, that the Maesters do have a sort of ideological bias against magic. We sort of saw as much in the prologue chapter of the second Game of Thrones book at Clash of Kings. There's this character called Cresson who tries to kill Melisandre. And like we see Cresson's motivations explained to us. Like, Cresson says that, you know, this Melisandre, she's a witch, she's a menace, she's like going against the gods. Like, I've got to stop her black sorcery, and like, he's a man of science and he's a maester. But it's like Cresson doesn't say, you know, this is a conspiracy. He doesn't say, oh, all of the old mates at the Citadel were ordering me to assassinate Melisandre. No. Like, I don't think it's a big conspiracy, but I do think that, like, individual maesters and small groups of maesters are conspiring. And I do think that Melos and Otto are conspiring to a large extent. Because, like, because Otto and the Hightowers, they are the ones who fund the maesters, you know? Like, the Citadel of the maesters is in Old Town. It makes a lot of sense that they would have connections. They would want each other to succeed. So I think that Melos at least does want to help Otto Hightower get Aegon on the throne instead of Rhaenyra. And maybe Melos and the Maesters also want to, like, maybe, you know, poison a few dragon eggs or something. Reduce the number of dragons in the world. But I think that's not, like, unique. I think that a lot of the lords of Westeros want to get rid of the dragons because they don't have dragons. Like, every lord in Westeros either wants a dragon or wants no one to have dragons. Like, because they are power. You know, everyone's jealous of power. But it seems as though Maester Melos is dead now, incidentally. I think that now Maester Melos has died, and now we've got Maester Orwyle on the ground, on the council. Where's the bloody small council scene? Because we had a small council scene where Rhaenyra offered to marry Jacaerys to Helena, and we met some new characters. We met Ironrod, who is the new Master of Laws, and we met again the new Maester Orwyle. I guess Orwyle is now the Grand Maester. Anyway, thanks for the super chat from Leah, who says, I loved Viserys' face during Rhaenyra's proposal to Alicent. Yeah, he like thumped the table and he was like, ah, yes, a most judicious proposal. Ah, yes, good idea. Like, Viserys was just overjoyed at the prospect of his wife and his daughter actually getting along for once. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, here's the scene. Viserys was really happy at the prospect of like, oh my god, maybe my problems will sort themselves out like I always wanted. But Alicent rejected it, which I think is so significant, you know? Like, Alicent was offered an olive branch, she was offered the possibility of peace and reconciliation, and she rejected it, you know? And I think that kind of makes Alicent a villain, you know? And I think it makes sense that Alicent rejects it, because like, she doesn't want to she doesn't want to reward Rhaenyra's bullshit. She doesn't want to marry her family to her brood of bastards, because Alicent cares so much about the rules. Like, Alicent really believes that, you know, what Rhaenyra did is wrong. Oh, and yeah, the breast milk coming through Rhaenyra's dress as well, like the indignity of like the biology and anatomy being pushed upon her. Rhaenyra's actor Emma Darcy talked about how Rhaenyra like feels in conflict with her gender, and she feels like gender limits her and fucks with her and prevents her political power, much like Cersei Lannister in Game of Thrones sort of feels at war with her own gender. And seeing Rhaenyra's gender undermine her in a moment of like political necessity, I think really sort of fits with that idea. Meanwhile, Alicent's actor Olivia Cook was saying that, you know, Alicent feels like she has always followed the rules. She's always been perfect. She's always towed the line. She's always done what Otto told her to do. And so it's so fucking unjust to her that Rhaenyra, who breaks all the rules, gets everything, gets away with everything, gets to enjoy life, gets freedom, gets to fuck Harwin on the side. Whereas Alicent, who followed all the rules and did all the right things, does not feel rewarded for her efforts. And that's a big part of what's going on. But you know, her actor Olivia Cook also like didn't defend Alicent like in the interview. She was kind of saying that Alicent is not a great person, is what her actor was saying in a recent Entertainment Weekly interview. Quote, Rhaenyra can just get away with anything, whereas Alicent has had to walk this tightrope her entire life. She looks around at her family, and they're so effed up. She's like, I've been so perfect, I haven't taken a step wrong, and it doesn't effing matter. She has a complete existential crisis. And yeah, she also said that her children are all fucking weird, she said. Aegon, the public masturbator, Helena, the bug girl, Aemond, the dragon fancier. So yeah, and Alicent also notes, Olivia Cook also notes, that all of Alicent's children are like almost as old as she is, because Alicent had these children quite young. And she says that her children are almost as much like siblings as they are like children, which is one of the sort of weird grossness. One of the weird gross things about like the ages in this story. And also like, you know, seeing Alicent care for Viserys. Like Viserys is this, you know, decrepit, dying old man. And Alicent is looking after him almost as though she's like, almost like, I mean, she seems more like his child or his grandchild more than his wife, you know, the relationship between Viserys and Alicent. And yeah, just that age gap makes it so uncomfortable. I mean, especially thinking that, you know, Alicent and Viserys were having children while Viserys's body is like disintegrating. And, you know, we saw how unhappy and uncomfortable Alicent was having sex with Viserys when his body was like covered in sores and like leprosy and crap. God, I hope we don't get another sex scene with Alicent and Viserys. Thanks for the super chat from the Caveless Bear, who says, love the live streams, part of my Sunday routine. Laris's actor nailed that final scene. Thanks for the super chat from Hell's Bell, who said, the episode was about the battleground of motherhood and the blindness of fathers. Lionel ignored Harwin, didn't even catch Laris's game. Well, I mean, we did get that argument between Lionel Strong and Harwin, where Lionel was saying, like, hey, you having sex with Princess Rhaenyra puts us all in danger. Because if it gets found out that you committed treason by hooking up with Rhaenyra, you could be murdered, you could be exiled, our whole house could be punished. And so Lionel tries to do the smart thing, which is run away. I really like Lionel's decision here. Because Lionel comes to Viserys and says, I quit. Like, I'm leaving. I don't even want to say why, but like, I'm leaving because Harwin is having sex with the princess and I don't want my family to be destroyed. And he's acting out of concern and love for his son Harwin. So, you know, he takes Harwin to Harrenhal away from Rhaenyra to prevent the affair from continuing, to get his family out of danger. But what he didn't see coming was his son Larys murdering him in the fire at Harrenhal. So, you know, it's kind of tragic that Lionel Strong is this sort of unexpected fan favorite, I think. Like, I wasn't expecting Lionel to be this great dude. And the reason why he's a great dude is that he seems to be the one guy who is unbiased and gives King Viserys good advice and doesn't, like, do everything out of his own self-interest. But here he makes this very reasonable decision where, like, I want to protect my family, so we're going back to Harrenhal. But then he got murdered by Larys. And I wonder, like, you know, like Lionel was aware that his son Harwin was having an affair with Rhaenyra. Was Lionel completely unaware of what a fucking murderous weirdo his son Larys is? I don't know. Like, was he blind to Larys but aware of Harwin? Thanks for the super chat from Jess, who says, ultimately, if Rhaenyra just legitimizes her sons when she becomes queen, it shouldn't matter, honestly. Yeah, that's a fair take, because, like, it kind of doesn't matter whether Rhaenyra's children are Laenor's children or Harwin's children, because the claim to the throne doesn't come from Laenor. The claim to the throne comes from Rhaenyra, from her father, King Viserys. So, like, theoretically, Rhaenyra could just say, yeah, Jacaerys and Lucerys and Joffrey, they are the children of Harwin Strong, and as the new queen, I will legitimize them, because that's something that rulers can do. They can make bastards into not bastards, like how Ramsay Snow in Game of Thrones became Ramsay Bolton. He was legitimized. So theoretically, if Queen Rhaenyra or if Viserys just legitimized these children as the true heirs, then theoretically it would all be hunky-dory. But realistically, people would take issue with that. I mean, people might argue that, like, Harwin Strong is not a highborn or respectable enough person. I mean, he is highborn, but they might argue that he's not respectable enough, or they might argue that Rhaenyra is a harlot and a slattern for having, you know, adulterous sex. And, you know, obviously the Velaryons would be outraged, because Corlys Velaryon is so interested in his, like, family's pride and legacy. I think Corlys would be furious if Rhaenyra said that, yeah, I cucked your son. Like, I think that would be an issue. So there's a lot of, like, delicate issues. So as much as we can say, oh, she should just legitimize them, I don't think it would be that easy. And, you know, of course that, you know, just again connects to the theme of, you know, intimate sexuality and intimate relationships being conflated and connected to grand political issues and wars. Like isn't it fundamentally just crazy that who dicks who is of national security importance? You know, like, the fate of this continent depends on who dicks who. That is absurd. That is crazy. But that was, like, you know, a reality for large chunks of human history, and, you know, is still a reality in a lot of ways for a lot of people. I think just sort of the absurdity of that and the pain of that is part of what this show is about. And I liked how they emphasized the blood when Rhaenyra birthed her son Joffrey. Like, she had blood on her, and the baby had blood on her, like, now, and, like, even as she's going up to see Alicent and Viserys, the blood is everywhere. And that, of course, connects to, like, the motifs of the opening sequence, because the opening sequence is all about blood as, like, the bloodline, and blood connecting to life and death and childbirth and violence and war. It's all connected. And I really liked Laenor in this episode as well, as sort of the long-suffering beard husband. Like, you know, he is playing the role of Rhaenyra's faithful husband, when in reality she's screwing with Harwin and he's screwing with his new boyfriend, Carl Corey. And I thought it was, you know, like he stumbles in drunk while Rhaenyra is trying to just like deal with politics and her baby and everything, and Laenor's just drunk and he's like, I want to go off to war. I want to go and get some sapphires on the stepstones. I want to go have a good time. And Rhaenyra's frustration with that. But I mean, Laenor is also putting up with a lot. Like, you know, Laenor is allowing Rhaenyra to cheat. She's allowing him to cheat. I don't know. I liked his performance. I thought it was an interesting change how, you know, Laenor does have this sort of ridiculous, sort of fun-loving, indulgent, sort of decadent thing, I guess. Like, Rhaenyra is saying, like, all you've been doing is indulging yourself for these 10 years. But Laenor also has this pride, and he says that, you know, I am a knight, I am a warrior. And that is sort of a change that they made from the books. Like, in the books, they say that Laenor only got knighted a couple of weeks before his wedding to Rhaenyra because it was sort of seen as the proper thing to do for him to be a knight, which implies that he's not much of a warrior in the books, whereas in the show he is, which I think is an interesting change. And yeah, the stepstones are becoming an issue again, because, like, you know, Daemon went and killed the crab feeder back in episode X, and now the stepstones continue to be a problem. Turns out, when you do a military intervention on some foreign land and kill a bunch of people and then leave, sometimes it becomes a shit show again a few years later. And Rhaenyra is saying, like, we should have actually, like, done something to hold this land, and, like, Viserys is like, oh my god, like, do we still have to deal with this crap? Is Viserys missing more fingers? How many fingers does Viserys have now? We need to do like a Viserys finger count. Has he lost more fingers? I don't know. He's very unwell. He's very unwell. Yes, Harwin Strong is dead. People in the live chat are confused. Harwin Strong and Lionel Strong are dead. Larys Strong is the sole survivor of the Strong family. Gear Check in the live chat says that Viserys has only one arm now. Is he missing an arm? See, I was trying so hard to count the fingers that I couldn't count. Oh, that's Iron Rod, by the way, new Master of Laws. Mushroom says that Iron Rod was he does not have the arm. Did he miss an arm and I didn't notice? You know that psychology experiment where, like, they show people the video of, like, the basketball players, and then the gorilla moonwalks through the frame and people don't even see the gorilla because they're so focused on the basketball players? I was so focused on Viserys' fingers that I didn't notice his missing arm. I guess I'll take your word for it, guys. I guess Viserys must be missing an arm. We'll keep an eye out. Missing an arm. My god. That's a downer. Anyway, thanks for the super chat from Tambule, who says, Alicent has gone crazy. She doesn't even realize how blinded by rage she has become, and also poisoning her son's mind. Creep in the making. Yeah, I thought it was so telling and so funny and so crazy that, like, Alicent walks in on her son masturbating out a window, and what she says is not, hey, son, stop doing that weird, gross shit and behave yourself. No, she comes in and says, Aegon, you need to start a war and take the throne and make conflict. And it's like, what kind of parenting is that? You're not worried about the public indecency, but you are worried about him not starting enough wars. Like, yeah, Alicent is really, like, creating conflict because, like, Aegon is, like, getting along with Jacaerys and Lucerys. I mean, admittedly, he's bullying his brother Aemond, but yeah, I don't think Alicent is doing a great job with her kids, but her kids are pretty effing weird, as the actor said. Yeah, my god. But this is all about how parents push kids into bad situations and conflicts. And that's what they were doing in this Dragon Pit scene, like giving the kids these weapons, teaching them to kill, you know, giving them the goat to burn, teaching the kids to enjoy violence. Like, this shot in particular is so disturbing because we hear the sheep. I thought it was a goat. Was it a sheep or a goat? We see the animal squealing in pain as it's being burned alive, and we see the smile on the kid's face. Is that Lucerys or Jacaerys? the smile on the kid's face, and it's like they are training these children to be killers, and it's horrifying. I also enjoyed this Dragon Pit guy who only spoke Valyrian. Like, he was speaking Valyrian, and then one of the other Dragon Pit people was translating. And it's like, where's this guy from that he doesn't know the common tongue, but he does speak Valyrian? Like, is he just, like, Dragon Pit for life? Like, does he just talk to dragons all day in Valyrian and not speak any common tongue? I want to know what this guy's story is. He's got all these scars on his face. Do you think that's connected to, like, dragon fire burns? Like, surely burns are an occupational hazard for the Dragon Pit people. And yeah, I also liked seeing, like, after Aemond was bullied and mocked with the pig, Aemond went down into the depths of the Dragon Pit alone, and he encountered some giant dragon, and then he ran away. It reminds me a bit of Quentin Martell in the books decides that he's going to get a dragon for himself. He goes down into Marine, and he tries to take one of Daenerys' dragons, and it doesn't work very well for him. So I hope that Aemond is more successful in attaining a dragon than Quentin Martell was. Thanks for the super chat from Ben, who says that Larys is definitely warging into those rats. Yeah, they had another little rodent make an appearance, and it sort of did connect to Larys, didn't it? Because we had, like, King Viserys hanging out playing Warhammer 40k, and then, you know, he's looking at the ring, which it's a Targaryen ring. I thought it was going to be Aemma Arryn's ring, but no, he's looking at a Targaryen ring. I guess, well, he kisses it. Maybe it is Aemma Arryn's ring. There was a really interesting interview, I think it was with Sarah Hess, one of the writers and producers, who said that the main reason why Viserys wants Rhaenyra to inherit the throne is because Rhaenyra is all Viserys has left of his wife, Aemma Arryn. And for Viserys, it's like making Rhaenyra heir is like an act of love to his wife, Aemma, and almost like an apology for getting Aemma killed by keeping on getting her pregnant even after it was increasingly risky to her health. So one of the writers said that, like, Viserys, it's all about his wife Aemma with him and his relationship to Rhaenyra. Anyway, but, like, while Viserys was, like, macking on the ring, he's missing an entire arm, isn't he? I can't believe I didn't notice he was missing an entire arm. Anyway, so the mouse goes along the mantelpiece. And then shortly after, we cut to the burning of Harrenhal and Larys. So I think the mouse is a symbol of Larys for sure. And as we talked about in the most recent explained video, there is a theory, most popularly advanced by a YouTuber, Joe Magician, about how Larys Strong might be a green seer. And I really like that theory. Like, I don't know if that's what they're going to do in House of the Dragon, but I do like that idea that Larys is a green seer. I kind of hope that they do it. Like, it is a bit goofy, it is a lot, but I kind of hope that they do it. Because, like, you know, one of the differences between House of the Dragon and Game of Thrones is that House of the Dragon is leaning a bit more into the magic stuff than Game of Thrones was. Game of Thrones always felt sort of embarrassed to be a fantasy show, whereas House of the Dragon is doing the Targaryen dreams, and the mysticism and the Valyrian stuff, and I hope we get a bit more magic as it goes on. Thanks for the super chat from Jack, who says, did Daemon learn to finish? It seems like he really loved Laena in his own way. Yeah, I thought Daemon and Laena's relationship was interesting. I thought that they did, like, an interesting take with it. Because, like, Daemon, the whole time that we've known him, has been always disconsolate, always restless, always rude, always constantly out doing bullshit because he was just never happy with his life and he was always trying to change things. But whereas now we see this sort of opposite situation where Daemon had sort of convinced himself that, you know, he was content. He was trying to be content. He was trying to stay still. He was trying to be away from King's Landing and away from his family and all of the stuff that was the source of his frustrations. And so he sort of says that, yeah, like, fuck it, like, let's just live in Pentos. Let's just be here. And Daemon is trying to convince himself that he's content here. I mean, even his clothing, like he's wearing this like pentoshi clothing. It looks like this casual wear. He's wearing some dad pajamas. He's trying to grow a dad beer gut. He's like trying to like, I'm just gonna chill. I'm just gonna grill. That's all I'm gonna do. But Lena is the one telling Daemon, "Hey, we are dragon riders. We are the blood of Valyria. We need to be part of the royal court. We need to seize our birthright. We need to have power." And it's so funny because like Daemon needs to be told that at this point, because previously Daemon was the guy who was like, "I am the Valyrian. I want power. I want to fight." And so, what it seems to me is that Daemon is attempting to be content, but he kind of knows that it's bullshit. Like, Daemon kind of knows that he can't ever be satisfied with sitting in the arse end of Pentos just reading books and grilling all day. Like, he knows that's not going to work for him. And I think Lena knows that too. But they described it in the inside the episode as like a marriage that is slowly breaking down. Like you can see that, neither of them are really happy because Lena wants to go back and be a Velaryon. And I think Daemon does too, deep down. It's just that Daemon has suffered too much pain in King's Landing and in the politics. He attempted to get away, but I think what we're seeing is that he can't stay away. I think Daemon's going to come back. He can't find satisfaction. But he must have found some satisfaction in his relationship with Lena. And I do wish we got to see a little bit more of like how that worked for him. What did Lena have that Rhaenyra and Rhea and Mysaria couldn't give him? And I think maybe the answer is like Valyrian children. Because it was really interesting that in the conversation between Lena and her child, Rhaena, she was saying that, like, Rhaena was saying that, oh, my dad doesn't, like, pay attention to me. He just, like, hangs out with Baela because Baela has a dragon. So, like, maybe, father ignores me, Rhaena says. So I think that, maybe part of what Daemon is all about in this family is that he really values the Valyrian dragon riding power stuff. So even as he is trying to act like he doesn't care about his legacy, I think he really does care about his legacy. I mean, there are a lot of connections between Daemon and Maegor Targaryen the Cruel, who is like his great-great-grandfather or something. Daemon, son of Baelon, grandson of Jaehaerys, and great-grand nephew of King Maegor the Cruel. That's Maegor up here. Because Maegor, interestingly, also was exiled to Pentos. And Maegor also wielded Dark Sister, the Valyrian steel sword that Daemon has. And Maegor married 6 wives, just like Daemon said that he wanted to marry multiple wives. And Viserys explicitly compares, or Emma explicitly compares Daemon to Maegor. So there's a lot of direct and indirect connections between Maegor and Daemon, which is very ominous because Maegor is universally regarded as an absolute piece of shit. He was just this violent monster. But one of the significant things about Maegor is that he never managed to reproduce. He kept marrying all these wives and blaming his reproductive failures on them, but it was Maegor who could never produce a living child, whereas Daemon does succeed in producing children. One of the details in the books is that when Lena dies in childbirth, I think I'm remembering this correctly, when Lena dies in childbirth, she gives birth to a twisted, monstrous stillborn, which is something that does happen sometimes. Targaryens birth dragon-like babies that don't survive, which might be related to their literal blood of the dragon, genetic connection to dragons. But if I remember rightly, Lena births one of those weird stillborns. So I guess, that is another connection between Maegor and Daemon. They both father twisted stillborns, which implies a sort of a darkness and a sort of an evil in their genes. Jobert in the live chat says that Maegor had a narrow urethra. Maegor had Blackfire, not Dark Sister, the cursed one said. He had both. Like, Maegor originally had Dark Sister, and then Maegor's brother, King Aenys, gave the sword Blackfire to Maegor. And after Maegor got Blackfire, he exclusively used Blackfire, not Dark Sister. But there was a time before he got Blackfire when he did use Dark Sister. So he did use both. Eva in the live chat says that Daemon didn't want multiple wives, he just wanted Rhaenyra. Yeah, I mean, Daemon said that he wanted to marry Mysaria whilst also being married to Rhea Royce. But Daemon also very quickly gave up on that idea. Like in that episode when Daemon was, causing a ruckus on Dragonstone, it really was just a bid for attention, I think. And I think we can question, like, was Daemon really serious about wanting to marry Mysaria and wanting to do all this stuff? Like, he said that Mysaria was pregnant, but she wasn't. So we can question whether, Daemon really was serious or if this was he was just saying crap to get a rise out of Viserys, which, he succeeded in doing. But yeah, lots of interesting connections between Daemon and Maegor. Do we want to do a little Pentoshi minute? Let's do a Pentos speed round. So Pentos is one of the free cities in the east. It is the closest free city to King's Landing. So here is Westeros in the west and Essos in the east. King's Landing is over here, and Pentos is over here. So Pentos is the city where we saw Illyrio in Game of Thrones Season 1, Episode 1. This is where Daenerys met Drogo in the arranged marriage between Drogo and Daenerys. This is our main man, Illyrio, here. And then in Game of Thrones Season 5, Varys brings Tyrion to Pentos. Also in Book 5, Tyrion comes to Pentos. And Pentos is run by the Magisters of Pentos. There is a Prince of Pentos, but the Prince of Pentos is a purely ceremonial role. And the Prince goes to all the feasts and balls and is in the place of high honor, and the Prince gets all this luxury and a palanquin to carry him around. And every New Year's Day, the Prince is required to deflower the Maiden of the Fields and the Maiden of the Seas. A bit of ritual sex to start the year, always a good way to start the year. But if ever the crops fail, or if ever Pentos loses a war, or if anything goes terribly wrong, they execute the Prince, and the Prince dies. That's what they do in Pentos. So, it's fun while it lasts, but you could be killed at any time. And it's sort of a metaphor for, political figures being used as, like, a scapegoat. Like, sometimes, people in political power are in power, but sometimes power is a ruse, and sometimes it's the politicians that are being used, just a figurehead, while the real powerful people, the string pullers like Lara Strong are the ones in charge. And in Pentos, it's the Magisters who are in charge. Magisters like Illyrio and Magisters like this guy, who I think is called Reggio Heraris or something. It sounds suspiciously like Dario Naharis, actually, even though Dario Naharis is from Tyrosh and Reggio Heraris is from Pentos. I don't know, whatever. But yeah, it was cool to see Pentos. And it was cool to see that this Magister was saying, like, hey, Daemon, you should totally hang out. You should totally put down roots. You should totally live here in Pentos, because Pentos is worried about the Triarchy. Because we learn this episode that the Triarchy, like the crab feeders buddies, Tyrosh, Myr, and Lys, the three daughters who have made an alliance and took over the Stepstones, now the Martells of Dawn have joined the three daughters, Tyrosh, Myr, and Lys, in alliance with the Triarchy. So there's like a potentially really dangerous force coming together here around the Stepstones. And like Dawn, remember, is not part of the Seven Kingdoms yet, because Aegon the Conqueror took over the Seven Kingdoms up here, but Aegon did not succeed in taking over Dawn. So Dawn is still its own thing, and now Dawn is getting in on the Stepstones. So at the small council scene, they were saying, like, oh goddamn, like the Stepstones are still a problem. Apparently Daemon roasting a bunch of pirates that one time did not solve this geopolitical problem. So what are we going to do about this? Continues to be an issue. So yeah, I hope we get to see the Martells. That would be cool. Helena's foresight. Yeah, Helena did say something in this episode that was kind of a spoiler. We're not going to spoil it. We're not going to spoil anything here. But Helena did say something that next episode will come to fruition, I think. I do like Helena's the depiction of Helena, the daughter of Alicent, and I like how she was a weirdo playing with bugs. She seems a little bit what's the word? Neurotypical. She looks like a bit of a weirdo, that Helena. And I feel like they almost sort of leaned into the trope of like the autistic savant or something. You know, when like, you know, Asperger's-y people in movies sometimes have psychic powers. I feel like they were sort of almost leaning into that with Helena. Helena sort of knew things that she shouldn't have known somehow. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like they were kind of doing that. Maybe Helena has dragon dreams. Like, that would make sense. It would make sense if Helena had dragon dreams, like Viserys. Peter Parker in the live chat says that Helena is the three-eyed raven. I don't think she's got old gods powers, because the Targaryens don't currently have first man blood, do they? Like, the Targaryens have married amongst themselves. They've married a Hightower. They've married a Velaryon. There's no first man blood in the Targaryens yet. Later on there is, when Aegon V Egg marries a Blackwood. But currently, I don't think the Targaryens would have old gods powers. Anyway, thanks for the super chat from Daedrian and CIE. And Bolin, who says, can't remember for the life of me, in Rhaenyra's children are Strong's children in the book. Yes. Yeah, this is all, like, very faithful to the book, I think. Like, they're making some changes, like, you know, Laena commits death by dragon instead of just dying in childbirth. But again, like, you know, it's plausible that there would be those sorts of differences, because Fire and Blood is all about unreliable narration, and there's, like, different versions of what really happened. And so the showrunners have to interpret and create, like, a version. Like, the showrunners have to say, you know, who really was behind the fire at Harrenhal, because in the books there's, like, a bunch of different theories. Was it Viserys? Was it Daemon? Was it Otto? Was it Larys? And in the show they say it was Larys. So, you know, like, they are mostly being very faithful to the books. Giselle says, who the fuck is Helena? Helena is this girl. Helena is the daughter of Alicent and Viserys, and she is the middle child between Aegon and Aemond. It, like, they do have, like, in the opening sequence now, they have, like, some, you know, symbols to represent the children, but, like, most people won't know what that means. Just check out the family tree. Viserys and Alicent are the parents of Aegon, Helena, and Aemond, and Rhaenyra and Laenor, but actually Rhaenyra and Harwin, are the parents of Jacaerys, Lucerys, and Joffrey. And Baela and Rhaena are the twins, the daughters of Daemon and Laena. These are the characters you need to know. Thanks for the super chat. Gizka says, did Melos kick the bucket? Yeah, I think that Melos has indeed kicked the bucket. I wish they acknowledged it. But I think that Melos has kicked the bucket, and now Orwyle is the new Grand Maester. Orwyle was at the Small Council. This guy is Orwyle. And we now also have Jasper the Iron Rod is now the new Master of Laws. I think it's kind of funny how, like, some of these characters have visibly... That's Iron Rod there. Some of these characters have visibly aged 10 years. Like, Lionel looks 10 years older, and Beesbury looks 10 years older, but Tywin Lannister looks, like, exactly the same. It is difficult with the time skips, but I don't know. It seems a little bit silly to me that some of them have aged and some of them haven't. Yeah, Jasper Wild. Thanks for the super chat from Travis, who says, by far the best episode. I love the increasing level of tension. What exactly does the beetle pin mean? I think the beetle pin is the symbol of Larys Strong. Like, he's just sort of taken that as his personal sigil, in, like, a similar way that Littlefinger takes the Mockingbird as his personal sigil. And I think it's very silly that these agents of Larys openly wear his symbol. Seems like a bad idea, but I think that's just for the viewers' benefit. But yeah, I think it's a cicada or a scarab beetle or something that Larys has taken as his symbol. Avery talks about the flavors of truth. Yeah, I mean, it sort of reminds me of like the shadows on a wall. Laris is so much like Littlefinger and Varys. Danny Michael in the super chat says, I honestly thought the baby would survive the fire. Is that possible? Yeah, I was a little bit, I feel like they're sending us mixed messages with the fire. Like, as far as I can tell, in the Game of Thrones shows, Daenerys Targaryen was fireproof in the show, but no other Targaryen is fireproof. No one is immune to fire. No one in the books is immune to fire. I mean, the Targaryens get cremated, they are not fireproof. But I feel like they did send mixed messages when, like, Daemon flew through fire on Caraxes and he was fine, but then Laena commits suicide by fire, and yeah, I presume her unborn baby died in that fire as well, if it was not already dead. They said that it might already be dead. Thanks for the super chat from Shino, who says that Laena burned herself to sever the bond with the dragon so that her daughter might. Oh, that's an interesting interpretation. Yeah, like maybe Laena, maybe Laena's death now allows her daughter Rhaena to bond with her dragon Vhagar. That would be cool because her daughter wants a dragon. So maybe that'll happen. Thanks for the super chat from Jake Tsua, who says, does someone else get to ride Vhagar since he burned his rider? Yes. I mean, theoretically, yes. Thanks for the super chat from Kpro, who says, lots of dragons in this episode. What was the dragon in the darkness that Aemond ran into early in the episode? I don't know. Yeah, because Aemond got teased for not having a dragon, so then he went down into the dragon pit, and he encountered a big scary dragon, and he ran away. I guess it could maybe be Dreamfire, who is the dragon of Helena. I guess it could be Vermithor, the Bronze Fury, the dragon of Jaehaerys Targaryen, the old king, who is now dead. I guess it could be Silverwing, the dragon of Alysanne, the wife of Jaehaerys. Like, what color is that dragon? It's sort of a murky, dark color. I don't know. It could be a lot of dragons. I mean, we don't really know exactly how many dragons are alive. There's a bunch of them. And there could be more that aren't mentioned in the text so far. I'm really looking forward to seeing Aegon's dragon Sunfire, because Sunfire is said to be one of the most beautiful dragons, like a big golden color. So I'm looking forward to seeing Sunfire. And we saw Arax, or Vermax, one of the young dragons of Jacaerys and Lucerys. So yeah, lots more dragons to come. Thanks for the super chat from Jess, who says, Helena was saying something quite ominous. A lovely, strange little girl. Thanks for the super chat from Oathkeeper65, who says, Daemon did nothing wrong. He wasn't going to make the same mistake his brother did. She died as she lived. Thanks for the super chat from Spencer, who says, how many Night's Watch castles are in effect right now? We watched your old video on the Doppler effect. We haven't got a lot of information on what's going on with the Night's Watch right now. We may learn more. I mean, the Wall has a couple of dozen castles? I don't remember exactly how many castles. But there is some stuff in Fire and Blood, how King Jaehaerys' queen, Alysanne, went up and got a new castle built and gave some funding to the Night's Watch and got some... was it Queen's Gate on the Wall to replace the Night Fort? So the Targaryens have been taking an interest in the Night's Watch and the Wall semi-recently, which you got to wonder, maybe that's connected to Aegon's dream, because Viserys is aware of this prophecy of Aegon that the Targaryens are going to have to defeat the White Walkers. So maybe Jaehaerys, since he was the one smart king who made good decisions for the future, maybe Jaehaerys and Alysanne funded the Night's Watch and made the Wall stronger so that they will be better prepared for the White Walkers. I think that would make sense. Fake anarchist in the live chat says that maybe Alduin from Skyrim will make an appearance. 18 to 19 castles, people are saying in the live chat. Yeah. Thanks for the super chat from Benson, who says, in episode 3, Harwin brings Viserys the Brown Heart and foreshadows, saying he's not white, but he's a big lad. In this episode, he refers to his sons as lads. That's a great catch. I hadn't noticed that. Yeah, because it was Harwin who was like wrestling the stag in episode 3. Harwin was like holding the stag down with ropes so that Viserys could kill it. And yeah, he said the stag he's not right, he's brown instead of white, but he's still a good lad. And that is just like Rhaenyra and Laenor's children. They have dark hair instead of white Valyrian hair, and that reveals that they're actually Harwin's children. But Harwin still loves them anyway, because Harwin is their father. And, you know, of course, there is a very close parallel here with the story of Jaime and Cersei's children, Joffrey, Tommen, and Myrcella, who have blonde hair when they should have dark hair, because the seed is strong. The Baratheon children tend to have black hair. So the fact that Joffrey, Tommen, and Myrcella have blonde hair, that is the hint that they are not really Robert's children. Here, the hair colors are reversed. Jacaerys and Lucerys and Joffrey should have the pale Valyrian hair of Rhaenyra and Laenor, but instead they have dark hair. But, I mean, you could make the argument, like, because Laenor's mother, Rhaenys, in the books, she has dark hair, because her mother, Jocelyn, is a Baratheon, and the Baratheons tend to have black hair. So, like, you could make the argument that maybe the reason why Rhaenyra's children have dark hair is because Rhaenys has Baratheon blood from Jocelyn. So maybe that's why they have dark hair. They could say that in this show. I suppose they won't, because, like, in this show, they made Rhaenys' hair blonde instead of black. I suppose so that, you know, it's more obvious that she is a Targaryen. But, you know, that is sort of like a plausible deniability that they could use. The seed is strong. Thanks for the super chat from Hairless Oyster, who says, have fun, be well, stay hydrated. Thank you, Hairless Oyster. Thanks for the super chat from CIE Project, who says, Viserys and his model of Valyria giving vibes of Bruno Ganz as Hitler in Downfall with his model of Germania, pining over the empire you'll never have. Yeah, there's certainly some symbolism there. I mean, it's like, you know, Viserys seems to be paying more attention to his imaginary empire than he is to his real empire, you know? Like, he's sort of retreating to an artificial world that he can control instead of enforcing his will over the real world. Like, he is not in control of his real family, he is not in control of the real world, so he takes control of an imaginary world instead. And I really enjoyed how he's got like a dedicated... He's got like a dedicated 40k modeling guy whose name is Eddard. Did you notice that? Like, Viserys says, hey, Eddard, you can go now. We shall continue this afternoon, Eddard. So apparently, like, the king's personal Games Workshop guy is named Eddard, which feels like a fun little Easter egg, because, of course, Ned Stark in Game of Thrones is called Eddard. Thanks for the super chat from Nikki, who says, big fan of the channel, especially the Watchmen one. Would you ever consider making a video on horror? We made a video about the movie Annihilation once. That's sort of a horror movie. Yeah, we might do some other like random movies and stuff in the future. We are going to make more Dune videos. There'll be a Dune Part 2 video. We're going to make a Jon Snow video, big character video about Jon Snow. And yeah, always open to other weird new shows as they come out. Bit sad that Raised by Wolves got cancelled. But yeah. Thanks for the super chat from Augustin, who said, do Rhaenyra's kids have dragon blood? Yeah. Yeah, they do. Because, you know, they are not the children of Laenor, they're the children of Harwin, but they are the children of Rhaenyra, and Rhaenyra does have dragon blood. But that is like an interesting question, like in the books, they talk about how Alicent and Alicent's faction, they thought that Jacaerys and Lucerys and Joffrey might not be able to control dragons, like because they have this dark hair, because they don't look Valyrian, they look more like Harwin Strong. In the books, Alicent's faction was saying that, you know, they won't be able to control dragons. The dragon eggs won't hatch for them. But that is not a problem, as it turns out. Like, we see Jacaerys and Lucerys controlling their dragons here. So they do have the dragon blood. They are able to control dragons. So you don't need blonde hair to control a dragon, but you do need the blood of the dragon. Thanks for the super chat from Lisbeth, who says, Rhaenyra's illegitimate children are a huge mess that she's made for personal indulgence. Understandable, but the consequences will hurt everyone. Yeah, I agree. I think Rhaenyra was selfish. Like, when she had children out of lust. I mean, Jesus, Harwin, like, pull out game, my man. It's a terrible idea. It is destabilizing. It is endangering everybody for Rhaenyra to have children out of wedlock, just like Cersei and Jaime having treasonous royal bastards instead of having children with Robert. And, like, it's understandable because, like, it sucks for your body to be the property of the state. Like, it sucks that Rhaenyra is expected to have sex with someone who she doesn't love and who isn't sexually interested in her, and her body is used as a vessel of, creating heirs. That sucks, but it is a selfish thing to do, to have these royal bastards, which risks starting a war. So I think you absolutely can, see Rhaenyra as culpable and guilty in starting this conflict, just as you can see Alicent as guilty, when she refuses Rhaenyra's peace offering at the Small Council today. So you can take different perspectives here. Oddlib in the live chat says, at least have one Laenor baby. I mean, like, that's what they said they were going to do. Like, last episode, when Rhaenyra and Laenor were walking on the beach, Rhaenyra said, we'll do our duty, we'll do what's expected of us, but then we will fuck around on the side. So it sounded like they were saying, yeah, let's have some children, but they didn't. Us in the live chat says, maybe Laenor is infertile. Maybe. I mean, they talked about, they talked in the book about how Laenor and Rhaenyra, like, they never consummated the marriage after their wedding, which is sort of understandable because, Laenor's boyfriend had just been beaten to death in front of him. So he probably wasn't in the mood to have sex with the gender that he's not attracted to at the best of times. But in the books, they talk about how Laenor only shared Rhaenyra's bed, like, a few times. And in the books, Laenor spent most of his time on the Driftmark Velaryon Island, away from Rhaenyra. And he, like, he joined her for, like, important formal occasions when he was expected to be there, but they mostly spent most of their time apart. It seems in the show that they spent, that he's been at King's Landing with her largely instead. But, it doesn't look like they've been sharing bed very much. Tudor Hawk in the live chat says, why not just why not just start the show here? Yeah, I mean, they could have, couldn't they? I mean, like, arguably they could, George Martin and Ryan Condal, who co-created this show, they talked about this. They talked about how one of the biggest questions when they started developing this show was, like, where should we start the story? George R. R. Martin was saying, let's start the story, like, early into Jaehaerys's reign. Like, let's start the story talking about Jaehaerys's children. Let's show Aemon, let's show Balon. Like, I think that's the implication of what George was saying. So George wanted to start this show in, like, the year 80 or something, or the year 70. And eventually they decided instead to show, like, a flashback to the Harrenhal Council, and then start the story proper around, the death of Emma in episode 1 and stuff. But, like, they talk about the importance of setting the prehistory. Because, like, if they just started this show with this episode 6, when Rhaenyra and Alicent are already adults, we wouldn't understand what that relationship between Rhaenyra and Alicent had been. We wouldn't understand Kristen's history with Rhaenyra. We wouldn't understand Daemon's history with Rhaenyra. There's a lot of backstory. Like, this is a generational story. And we wouldn't understand the conflicts between, Alicent's children and Rhaenyra's children until we understood Alicent and Rhaenyra's history, And, like, Viserys' performance has been so cool. Paddy Considine as Viserys. Would you really wanted to have missed out on Viserys and Daemon and their rivalry and their issues during those first 5 episodes? So I think that they made a really good decision by giving us this prehistory. But I mean, I would have loved to have seen Aemon and Balon as well if they started even further back. I hope one day we get to see Jaehaerys' reign. So yeah, I think the backstory is important. But I do sympathize if you guys feel that it's going a bit fast with all these time skips and stuff. I think, there will be some fewer time skips as the story gets a bit closer to the pointy end. Thanks for the super chat from Guinevere, and from Laura, who says thanks for the work, and from Leo, who says, is Laris the new Littlefinger? Laris Finger? Well, you'll notice that Laris's name is similar to Varys and Littlefinger. If you take the L from Littlefinger and the Aris from Varys, you get Laris. So I don't think that's a coincidence. Thanks for the super chat from Jensai, who says, I can't respect Kristen Cole. Imagine being so salty that a woman didn't run away with you, that you side with her worst enemy. Yeah, this is intensely personal for Kristen. Kristen calls Rhaenyra a spider who stings and sucks her prey dry. Kristen is still furious at Rhaenyra for having sex with him and then abandoning him. Which still, Rhaenyra was saying last episode, stay here, you can be my secret boyfriend, just, chill. But Kristen was like, no, you must marry me and run away with me, or else nothing. So yeah, it is a bit, it's crazy how angry Kristen is. I mean, some people are like this. Some people do not handle rejection very well. I mean, what's crazy is that Kristen has, stuck with that feeling for the last 10 years. Kristen has not even begun to get over it. In fact, he's more angry about it now, it seems, And I guess that's because of his partnership with Alicent. Because last episode, Alicent, created this alliance with Kristen Cole, and they sort of, they are the people who hate Rhaenyra club, I think Alicent and Kristen's relationship is completely based around their mutual hatred of Rhaenyra. So, I think they sort of keep that flame alive between them. I think that a large part of why Alicent, hates Rhaenyra so much is because of Kristen, because Kristen reinforces her hatred of Rhaenyra. Like Alicent and Kristen, it seems like all they do is just sit around bitching about Rhaenyra all day. I think that if Kristen and Alicent weren't close and didn't have this friendship, maybe they would have chilled out. But because they just create this anti-Rhaenyra echo chamber, they just don't get over it. So I think it is such a wonderfully unhealthy relationship that Alicent and Kristen has. But it makes so much sense, Alicent and Kristen, in the sense that they are both rule abiders. They are both people who have made big sacrifices to follow the rules. Kristen gave up everything that he was before. When you join the Kingsguard, you give up your family name, you give up your family crest, and your Kingsguard becomes your entire identity, your entire purpose. You don't get to leave the Kingsguard until you die. Kristen has given up everything to become the Kingsguard. So he is bought in. He is bought into these vows. He is bought into this life of chastity. And that's why he's so furious with Rhaenyra and so furious at himself. I think that Kristen hates himself, ultimately, but he just projects that hatred onto everyone else. It's when Kristen kills Joffrey Lonmouth, it doesn't make any fucking sense. Joffrey didn't really threaten him. I mean, Joffrey kind of threatened him, but it didn't make sense for Kristen to be so enraged at Joffrey. I think Kristen was really angry at himself and at Rhaenyra, and he just channeled and directed that violence at Joffrey. And I think some people are like that. Some people do project their self-hatred and their frustrations at others, at innocent victims. And Alicent, similarly, she is a rule follower. She is bought in. She has given up any kind of outside independent agency by marrying Viserys, by having children with Viserys. And, she feels like she's bought in, and she feels like she is owed something for her decades of, following the rules, for her decades of being plowed by this decrepit old man. Sorry, Paddy Considine. And Alicent feels like she is owed better than what she has. I mean, Kristen in this scene calls Rhaenyra a spoiled C-word. Not allowed to say the C-word on YouTube, apparently. Got demonetized the first House of the Dragon Explained video. Anyways, so Kristen calls Rhaenyra spoiled, which, I think has truth to it, because, Rhaenyra has had so much freedom. She gets to ride a dragon, she gets to have a secret boyfriend, she gets a life of luxury in a lot of ways. But I think, just as Rhaenyra is spoiled, I think Alicent also has many of the same privileges as Rhaenyra. She doesn't have quite the same amount of freedom. But I mean, Alicent could, right? Like, I mean, it's not like Rhaenyra like has any more license to do what she wants than Alicent has. Like Rhaenyra is breaking the rules and getting away with it. Alicent probably also could break the rules and get away with it. Like, if Alicent, say, wanted to bone Kristen on the side, I feel like she probably could get away with it as much as Rhaenyra could get away with it. Because, like, fundamentally, King Viserys is weak. King Viserys does not exert his authority. He wants everyone to get along. He doesn't want to confront anyone over anything. I think Alicent could get away with more if she wanted to. Like, I think Viserys would turn a blind eye to Alicent if she chose to break some rules, just like Rhaenyra is. So it's sort of like, Alicent maybe is not as constrained as she thinks she is. In an interview with the actor Olivia Cook, she said that Alicent has been completely bred to breed, and to breed powerful men. That's her only function in this life. It's learning to live within this straitjacket of oppression. How do I move inch by inch every day to loosen the straps? Whereas Rhaenyra can get away with anything. And it's so interesting that, why is it that Rhaenyra can get away with more than Alicent can? I guess partly it's her relationship with Viserys. Viserys loves his daughter, but Viserys also loves Alicent. And it's so interesting, like how many of those straps of oppression, like how much of that is physical, like explicit rules, how much of that is biological, anatomical reality, and how much of that is like the weight of expectation with Alicent. How much of that is, does she feel constrained by her father's expectations? Does she feel constrained by Viserys's expectations? Like, how much of that is like social, psychological weight? How much of that, I don't know. It's deep. It's complicated. Some people, yeah. All right, thank you for the super chat from Leo and from Inquisitor. Inquisitor says that Laena's death by Vhagar is nihilistic. Yeah, I don't... It's such a dark thing, like you can see it as like this sort of liberated, like, she wants to die as a dragon rider, she wants to die as a Valyrian. But it's also like it's so dark. Like it's like putting a shotgun in your mouth. Like, it's this horrible suicide. But it's also like, well, she was gonna die anyway, so I guess. I wish I got to see her ride on Vhagar one last time, And Vhagar's reluctance to burn Laena, it's so fucked up. I mean, what if the Maesters were wrong, What if the Maesters were wrong and there was some possibility of her surviving? Like the Pentoshi... I mean, it wasn't a Maester. It's like some kind of Pentoshi doctor. A Poctor? The Pentoshi doctor said, like, we could do a C-section to try to save the child, but Laena would not survive. So at least according to the doctor, there was no way for Laena to survive this. But, like, goddamn, like, what if there was? It's horrible. Meg in the live chat says that in this case, Laena chose her death, not her husband. Yeah, that's a good point. Because, like, Emma in episode 1... it was really messed up how her husband, Viserys, made the choice to kill her by cutting her open in the C-section. Whereas in this episode, Laena made the choice about how she wants to die. So there's definitely, taking agency there. I mean, it was notable that the doctor went to Viserys, not to Laena. So, the same situation in that sense as episode 1. But here, Laena takes control of how she goes out. Thanks for the super chat from Harrison and from Parkour. Yeah, I think Helena Targaryen might be a dreamer. It's really cool seeing her playing with her bugs, being a weirdo. Thanks for the super chat from Bear, who says, hard to feel any sympathy for Kristen. Dude is kinda whack. Got to agree with that. Franco says, what's up with Aegon pleasuring himself out in the open? Yeah, I thought that was very funny. The books do not say that Aegon is a, well, actually it kind of almost does. The description of Aegon in the books says that he is lazy and sulky with a more than healthy appetite for food and sex. He's a glutton at table, swills ale and strong wine, and he pinches and fondles any serving woman who comes near. And we do learn more about Aegon's sexual exploits as the story goes on, so maybe we'll see some of that. And I did like that there was a moment in the yard when like Aegon got distracted and like was perving on some serving girls who were walking past when he was meant to be training. So like I think they are being quite book faithful here with the depiction of Aegon as a sort of a decadent, indulgent. I mean, like, he's a teenage boy is the other thing. Like, it kind of makes, like, it makes sense that you would get this, like, gross, deviant, selfish asshole when you have a teenager and tell the teenager, you're the most important thing in the world, you're a royal prince, you're better than everyone else. Like, it, you know, I think that is a recipe for making someone into a not very nice human being. It is similar to Joffrey. And yeah, I like the portrayal of Aegon so far, and I love that Aegon is not really interested in being king. And it's kind of like, wouldn't it be better for everyone if Aegon was just not pushed into being king? If he was just allowed to live, at least if Aegon lived a life of pointless, selfish decadence, at least he wouldn't be hurting anyone, or at least he wouldn't be hurting as many people as he would if he's pushed into being king, you know? I mean, it's a bit like the Prince of Pentos. The Prince of Pentos lives a life of pointless decadence. Maybe we'd all be better off if our politicians just did that. Giving actual power to someone like Aegon is where things get really catastrophically out of control, I think. So yeah, I thought Aegon's sexual misadventures were amusing and pretty book accurate. In the live chat, Milosh says, why does Larys benefit from Otto's return? I mean, there's several reasons why Larys killed his father Lionel and his brother Harwin in the fire at Harrenhal. I mean, one of the self-interested reasons is that now that Lord Lionel Strong is dead, Larys Strong inherits Harrenhal. Larys will become the new lord of House Strong. So he makes himself a lot more powerful. But I think also, like, he sort of does this crime and sort of makes Alicent aware of it. And he says that he did it for Alicent so that Otto could now become the new Hand of the King to replace Lionel. But he, you know, it sort of like makes Alicent complicit in his crime. So I think Larys is sort of binding Alicent to him. Like, I mean, I guess Alicent could, you know, punish Larys for the crime. Like, Alicent could publicly say, hey, everybody, Larys killed Lionel and Harwin. But, like, Lionel has made himself useful to Alicent. Like, Larys has made himself, like, the master of whisperers for Alicent and brings her all this important gossip. Like, Alicent needs Larys. So, and Larys knows that and is exploiting that, you know? So I think that Larys is sort of controlling and manipulating Alicent through this murder, which is smart and cool. AJ says, is Harwin really dead? Yeah, I mean, we saw Harwin die at Harrenhal when all those like burning wood fell on him. So sad to say Harwin is dead, which is unfortunate. Like, I would have liked to have seen a bit more of Harwin's relationship with Rhaenyra. I would have liked to have seen some intimacy with Harwin and Rhaenyra. I mean, there's all this stuff in the book about how, like, on the night that Rhaenyra tried to seduce Criston, she got rejected, according to one person in the book, and then Rhaenyra went into the arms of Harwin and had sex with Harwin after Criston rejected her, is something that the books say. I really would have liked to have seen, like, what was this secret relationship like between Harwin and Rhaenyra? Because all we've really seen in the show is that, like, you know, Harwin carried Rhaenyra out of the brawl at her wedding with Laenor. And I mean, look, I can see the appeal. So I think a lot of people would love nothing better than to be a fireman carried out of a brawl by Harwin Breakbones. I can see that, you know, might light a certain fire in some people. You know, it makes perfect sense that Rhaenyra would be attracted to this guy, I think. But yeah, it's a shame that we didn't get to actually see that relationship. And, you know, I did like that we had this moment of farewell, where, like, Harwin farewelled his children, Jacaerys and Lucerys, before he left for Harrenhal, little knowing that he was about to die. But, you know, I thought it was really cool how we got that sort of awkward, strange moment where Harwin, he was saying goodbye to these kids that he knows are his, but he's not allowed to like openly acknowledge that they're his kids. Be good to your mother, lads, he says. And it's sort of this awkward, sad moment. And the children don't even know for sure if Harwin is their father. Because we had this moment where Jacaerys, I think it was Jacaerys, like, asked Rhaenyra, like, hey, like, am I a bastard? Is Harwin my father? And Rhaenyra, like, doesn't answer him. She just says that, like, oh, well, you're a Targaryen, and that's all that matters. Which, how frustrating is that for the kid to, like, never know for sure who your father is? I mean, it reminds me of Jon Snow asking Ned Stark, like, who was my mother? And Ned just says, oh, you know, next time I see you, I'll tell you, but he never does. So do you think Jacaerys and Lucerys and Joffrey will ever know for sure who their father was? Will Rhaenyra ever tell them? Does the child have a right to know? It's interesting stuff. Puggy says they kind of know now. Jacaerys seems to not know. Lavos says that Harwin died because his name is Breakbones, not Breakdoor. Yeah. So we saw the moment where like the fire started in Harrenhal, started by the agents of Lionel Strong. And Lionel woke up and smelled the smoke, and it looks like the doors were barred. And Harwin was also trying to break his way out. And you would think that like surely the strongest knight in Westeros might have a fighting chance. Like Harwin versus Door. I would bet on Harwin personally. But I guess Larys's agents really shut that door up tight, and so Harwin tragically dies. Which sucks. I wish we got to see Harwin, like, fight someone other than Criston Cole. Because Harwin is such this badass character, we don't really see him do much. In the books, there's a moment where Criston Cole beats up Harwin. And Criston Cole beats up Harwin so bad at a tournament melee that they start calling him Broken Bones instead of Break Bones, because Criston Cole broke Harwin's bones in this fight. So yeah, I do wish we got to see more of Harwin. I also wish we got to see more of Laena and Laena's relationship with Daemon and like how that worked, and how Daemon managed to get over his inability to finish. Maybe Laena knew a few tricks that Mysaria didn't. I don't know. Yeah, there is a bit of a hold the door moment here, isn't there? Maybe Hodor was on the other side of that door. Because remember when Hodor was holding the door in Season 6? When Hodor was heroically saving Bran and Mira from the zombies. Maybe Hodor was on the other side of the door when Harwin was unable to get through. Oh, that's dark. That's dark. Thanks for the super chat from Ruludos, who says, notice me, Shift Senpai. Consider yourself noticed. Thanks for the donation from Mace, who says, seeing Vhagar all old and saggy makes me want to see her at her prime, along with Balerion in the Conquest. It would be really cool if they made a Aegon's Conquest TV show, and they have talked about that being a possibility. They have talked about maybe doing TV shows about other eras in Targaryen history. Like House of the Dragon could become an anthology series where they cover other time periods. I mean, I think Aegon's Conquest would be similar in that there would be a lot of dragons and there'd be a lot of violence. I think it could make a cool TV show. I heard it. Well, it was reported by some media outlets that HBO did consider making an Aegon the Conqueror show. And the plan was, or like the pitch was, that Aegon would be portrayed as a drunken lout. Which is weird. Because in the books, Aegon is a mysterious guy in the books. But he's generally described as like very competent, very focused, not very talkative, bit mysterious what's going on with him, but like very sort of focused. He was a smart politician. He was a great warrior. I mean, he was a little bit like Rhaegar. And I guess, you know, the Rhaegar-Aegon similarity makes sense because Rhaegar was someone who was very motivated by prophecy. Rhaegar decided that he must be a warrior because of something he read in the ancient scrolls, so he might have rediscovered Aegon's prophecy. Maybe Aegon had a similar personality for similar reasons. Maybe Aegon was very focused on his prophetic purpose, trying to unite Westeros against the White Walkers. But yeah, Aegon the Conquest prequel would be cool. Would be cool. AJ in the live chat says that people want a Jon Snow show. I'm a little more skeptical of the Jon Snow show personally, but yeah, that is another prequel show that they've talked about potentially doing. Thanks for the super chat from Mace, who says, Alicent saying the king needs to rest reminded me of Tywin's "the king is tired" moment. It shows who really holds the power. Yeah, I think that's a great comparison. Because, yeah, there was that moment in Game of Thrones when Joffrey was being a little shit. I guess that doesn't narrow it down, does it? There was a moment where Joffrey was being a little shit, and Tywin said, all right, Joffrey, time to go to bed. The king needs to rest. And so he was showing his authority and his power over Joffrey. And there is a similar moment here where, Rhaenyra makes her sort of peace offering, and then Alicent says, the king must rest. And so she sends him to bed. And so I guess as Viserys' health is declining, his authority is, what little he had is disintegrating, and Alicent is increasingly taking power. Alicent was they had this conversation afterwards where Viserys was like, hey, like, you totally should marry Helena to Rhaenyra's son, Jacaerys. But Alicent was refusing to one of her plain-featured sons. So Alicent makes it clear that, like, part of why she refuses to marry her child to Rhaenyra's child is because Rhaenyra's children are bastards. And it is serious. Like the Westerosi prejudice against bastards is a big deal. Because they really believe that bastards are like, there's evil in their blood. Betrayal is in their blood. And Alicent is, she's religious, she's very proper, she follows the rules, and when you add on her personal grievances against Rhaenyra, I guess it makes sense that Alicent would not want to join her family to Rhaenyra's family. But if they just put aside their differences and united, it would be so much better for everyone, And so, yeah, that's very upsetting for Jacaerys as well, like not knowing if he's a bastard and having to deal with that prejudice. I'm really interested to see how the characters of Jacaerys and Lucerys develop as the story goes on. Thanks for the donation from Ludacris, who says, what do you think is Larys's motivation? We already answered that. It's about becoming Lord of Harrenhal, and it's about cementing his alliance with Alicent, and it's about getting Otto into Hand of the King again. Thanks for the donation from Wealth Wolf, who says, Sir Krispy Kreme is very unlikable. Thanks for the donation from Sorellarelaras, who says, any connection between Balerion's death and Viserys melting away? Yeah, I mean, we were talking before about how some Targaryens seem to believe that dragons give them strength. And, like, in the books, Laena went out to her dragon, Vhagar, in her last moments before she died from childbirth. And also, like, Princess Daenerys Targaryen, a different Daenerys Targaryen. Her father Jaehaerys was saying she must have a dragon, like the dragon will make her strong and healthy. So yeah, I think that it is reasonable to speculate that maybe the death of Balerion sort of robbed Viserys of a source of strength. And when Balerion died, something died inside Viserys, and he was never going to have that strength again. I mean, it's sort of like, Larys was saying this episode that children are a vulnerability in us. Children, we think that children make us immortal, but really children just make us vulnerable. And I guess in a funny way, like a dragon can make you vulnerable because, when the dragon is lost, or when the dragon fucks up, or when the dragon burns the wrong person, you are vulnerable. So yeah, maybe Viserys was made vulnerable by Balerion's death. Because once you've bonded with a dragon and the dragon dies, you can never bond with another dragon. So Viserys did sort of condemn himself to a life without dragon power. Thanks for the donation from Ranark, who says, when Rhaenyra proposes for Jacaerys to wed Helena, she proposes it to Alicent, not Viserys. And Alicent speaks for the king and tells him he must rest now. Shows who holds the power. Yeah, I mean, Rhaenyra didn't ask Viserys, Rhaenyra asked Alicent. So, like, yeah, it shows all the more that Viserys has no authority, because, like, a royal marriage like that is something that you're meant to negotiate with the fathers, like when Corlys and Viserys negotiated the marriage of Rhaenyra and Laenor. And so, yeah, we see that Rhaenyra and Alicent are now rising as, like, these two competing, powerful people, both overriding Viserys. So it's a really dangerous situation. I mean, obviously, like, Rhaenyra is the one who should be the powerful one, because Rhaenyra is the heir to the throne and Alicent isn't. But, you know, Rhaenyra submits to Alicent's will when Alicent has Rhaenyra, like, brought to her with her baby. Like, it's so funny that Alicent, like, gaslights the shit out of Rhaenyra by going, "Oh, Rhaenyra, you should be resting after giving birth." But it was Alicent who gave the order for Rhaenyra to be dragged up here so that she could see the baby and check whether it was Harwin's or Laenor's. Like, she says that incredibly, like, brutally rude comment to Laenor, where Alicent says to Laenor, "Keep trying, you may get one that looks like you." Alicent says that to Laenor, which is her way of saying, like, "I know that you are not the father of these children." Like, it's like this sort of emasculating moment where Laenor was speaking with Rhaenyra, and then Harwin came, and Harwin sort of took over and Laenor left. And it's like, what would that be like? Like, being married to a woman, raising the kids that you know were actually fathered by Harwin. It's such a fucked up situation. And Laenor, like, seems semi-okay with, like, his life and his boyfriends and his drink, but it's like, I wonder if some of Laenor's decadence comes from a sort of wanting to distract himself from how unpleasant his situation is. But also, like, you know, Laenor is blind to the unpleasantness for Rhaenyra. Like, it's so funny, this conversation Rhaenyra and Laenor have, where Laenor's like, "Oh, was that unpleasant, giving birth? How was that? Did you know that I got stabbed with a lance once?" And he sort of, "Yeah, I took a lance through the shoulder once." And Rhaenyra does not even, like, dignify his dumb comments with an answer. Like, Rhaenyra just has no time for Laenor right now. And I guess you can credit Laenor for trying to be helpful, but Laenor is so oblivious to what's sort of going on with her. I don't know, it's a complicated relationship. And I hope we get to see more of Laenor and Rhaenyra. Thanks for the super chat from Sherryberry, who says, "I'm so pissed that they killed Laena. That was unexpected." Yeah, it was quick. We got such a short amount of time with Laena played by that actor. Thanks for the super chat from Siegel, who says, "You can see how Alicent sees traits of Rhaenyra that she's trying to shake out of Aegon." Yeah, that's an interesting point. Because, like, Alicent is saying, like, hey, like, you know, you need to be focused on your political duties and you need to stop mucking around. Which I guess is similar to how she feels about Rhaenyra. Like, Alicent is frustrated that Rhaenyra does what she wants, and does sort of the female equivalent of masturbating out a window, which is hooking up with Harwin. And Alicent is saying, you got to do your duty, you got to follow the rules. So, you know, Alicent is so... And I think she's passing down what she got from Otto. Like, we saw Otto with Alicent, like, Otto impressing on Alicent, you must do your duty, you must prepare for this conflict that is coming. Like, that's what we saw last episode. Otto was saying to Alicent, there will be conflict, you must put Aegon on the throne. And now Alicent says, like, the same shit to Aegon now. There will be conflict, you are the crown, you must be ready for this. So, you know, again, I think that's part of why it was a good idea to have this sort of prehistory and this sort of slow build up in the story, so that we could see how, you know, all of this conflict, all of these issues are passed down from generation to generation. I think that makes a lot of sense. Thanks for the super chat from Nolan, who says, "Do you think Daemon had empathy for Viserys, seeing her choose to die by dragon, in reference to heir for a day statements?" Yeah, that's an interesting comparison, because, like, yeah, in the same way that Emma Arryn died along with her baby after her horrific C-section and her childbirth, Daemon now has lost his wife and his unborn child in childbirth. So Daemon has had a similar experience to Viserys now. So yeah, maybe he does have new sympathy now, and maybe he'll be able to reconnect with Viserys now. Like, you can tell that Daemon's relationship with Viserys is still very much on his mind. I think Laena says that, like, you miss him. So that's definitely still on his mind. Viventroll says, I don't get how Kristen is still part of the Kingsguard after murdering Laenor's best friend and lover, Joffrey Lonmouth, on his wedding. Yeah, I'm a little frustrated by that too. Like, I think we have to assume that Alicent protected Kristen from punishment. And maybe there was some lie. Like, maybe Alicent and Kristen said, Joffrey tried to assault someone. Like Joffrey pulled out a knife and he was going to attack Rhaenyra, so that's why we had to kill him. Or maybe they say, Joffrey was spreading insulting rumors about the princess. So he made some insinuation, and so Kristen defended Rhaenyra's honor by beating Joffrey to death. I think it would be possible for Alicent to sort of pull some strings. And, like, we know that Viserys just has no capacity to keep his house in order. Viserys just, like, does not... Like, Viserys would not have put his foot down and said Kristen must be fired. I think Viserys may have allowed Alicent to use her authority to protect Kristen. But, I would like to see more of, like, what is it like for Laenor and Rhaenyra, like, seeing Kristen every day. Laenor has to put up with seeing Kristen, the man who murdered his boyfriend at his wedding. Like, look at this look. I love when Laenor turns his head to look at Kristen. You can't fucking see anything because it's in the dark, but there is a look that passes between Kristen and Laenor. And it's like, my God, like, how must Laenor feel seeing Kristen every day? I would like it if they acknowledged it. I mean, personally, if you'll indulge some more fan fiction, what I would have liked to have seen last episode, after Kristen killed Joffrey, I would have liked to have seen Harold Westerling, like, stepping up towards Kristen to arrest Kristen. But then Alicent, like, just, like, putting a hand on Harold and saying, like, no, like, I'm gonna take charge of him. And it could have been wordless. Like, it was cool at the end of last episode how the whole sequence with Rhaenyra and Laenor's marriage and Kristen committing suicide and then Alicent saving him, it was all without words. I would have liked to have seen just a wordless gesture from Alicent, just sort of indicating, like, no, like, I'm gonna look after Kristen, I'm gonna take Kristen to the Godswood. I mean, just as a way to indicate that Alicent is protecting Kristen from punishment. I would have liked to have seen something like that. What is going on with the thing there? Thanks for the super chat from Ina, who says, are we happy with the new actors? I feel like we're still getting to know them. I think we can really see how embittered both Rhaenyra and Alicent have become. Like Rhaenyra in the first 5 episodes, played by Millie Alcock, had so much joy to her and so much, like, sort of cheeky rebelliousness. And we don't see, like, any of that in this episode. Rhaenyra is so just, like, serious and frustrated and sort of stoic in the face of the bullshit and the lies that she must tell with the parentage of her children. Like, we don't see that same cheekiness. Well, I mean, that's kind of why I would have liked to have seen some interaction between Rhaenyra and Harwin, or more interaction between Rhaenyra and Harwin. Like, I would have liked to have seen some of that joy and some of that fun between Rhaenyra and Harwin, because that sort of would have made their relationship make a bit more sense. Like, Rhaenyra is so frustrated by, like, the political front that she must put up as princess. Maybe Harwin was, like, the one person she could be honest with. Harwin was, like, the one person who she could have fun with and just relax with. That would make sense. But, like, we never got to see Rhaenyra alone with Harwin in this episode before Harwin died. So that's a shame. So yeah, I like Emma Darcy's performance so far. But I hope we get to see more sort of layers and sides to her as we go along. I hope we don't just see, like, stoic, angry Rhaenyra the whole time. Alicent, I think, is great, played by Olivia Cook. Like, she is this just frustrated, stick up the arse, like, rule following, bitter, like, I feel like we've all met people who are a little bit like this Alicent Hightower, who feels like she is owed more than she has and makes it other people's problem. And, some of it is righteous and some of it is not. It's only been 1 episode. I liked Laena. I wish we saw more of Laena. I really would have liked to have learned more about, like, Daemon and Laena's relationship and, like, how they got together. Because, like, we saw Daemon and Laena flirting at the wedding last episode, and that was fun. There was certainly like some lust and some desire to it, but I still wonder like how much of Daemon's interest in Lena was lust and love, and how much was political power. Because marrying Lena Velaryon, like, she is the daughter of House Velaryon, like the second most powerful house in the realm. She's a dragon rider with the biggest dragon in the world. Like Daemon is very aware of what that means for his personal power. So I'd love to know, like, how much of what was their relationship like when it was working, like at the start, because we only get to see their relationship at the end when it's already sort of starting to fall apart a bit. Yeah, I don't know. It interests me. Thanks for the super chat from Robert, who says, how do you feel about Daemon's relation with his daughters? Yeah, I mean, we did get that scene. We did get the scene, like, momentarily on the roof where Daemon was talking to his daughters, Baela and Rhaena, the twins. I don't think we got a lot of substance in that scene, did we? Was it wordless when he was just sitting on the roof with his daughters and they were, like, grieving Lena? I don't think we got a whole lot there. Yeah, I think we just got like a momentary wordless scene when he was just sort of mourning his dead wife with Baela and Rhaena. It'll be cool to see more from these two. And I really like the dynamic of, like, Baela has a dragon but Rhaena doesn't. I like that as a way of sort of differentiating the twins and setting them on different paths. We saw that Daemon was, like, teaching Baela. I wonder if he was teaching her. Oh yeah, well, he was teaching her Valyrian, wasn't he? Which again, like, emphasizes Daemon's interest in his Valyrian legacy. I really like that as a character trait for Daemon in the show, that he is very. I mean, Viserys is also very obsessed with his Valyrian legacy, with, like, his Valyria model and everything. But, like, it's like, while Viserys wants to sort of LARP with his Warhammer 40k model of Valyria, and he wants to sort of, in a very sort of safe, controlled way, he wants to sort of imagine and read about Valyria. Daemon wants to, like, make Valyria anew. Like, Daemon wants to be a dragon rider, be a polygamist, like, break the rules, be a conqueror, fight wars, whereas Viserys just likes a sort of safe, simulated version of Valyria. In the books, so, like, Daemon and Lena marry, and then they sort of abscond and run off to the east, like, partly because they marry without the permission of King Viserys, or without the permission of Corlys. So everyone's kind of angry at Lena and Daemon for going and running off without their permission. And Daemon and Rhaena fly their dragons, Vhagar and Caraxes, around the world for a while. They go on a little honeymoon across the world. And in the book, one person claims that Daemon and Lena went to Valyria, the ruins of ancient Valyria, which was destroyed in the Doom, and which is now cursed and inhabited by spooky, mysterious creatures. And in the book, there's, like, stone men in Valyria, but in the show, there are stone men in Valyria with grayscale. But in the books, Valyria is, like, so cursed that, like, no one goes there. Except maybe for Euron, if he's telling the truth. But I do like that idea of, it would be cool if Daemon went to Valyria. Because, I mean, like Euron, that's sort of a crazy bid for power that most people's balls are not brazen enough to go to Valyria, because most people think they'll die there. And I think since the Daemon of Hot D is, like, particularly into his Valyrian legacy, I think it would make a lot of sense for him to go to Valyria. But, I don't know, maybe that's something they could do later, potentially, maybe. But yeah, for now, they were just hanging out in Pentos, just as a little vacation, which the Pentoshi Magister was trying to leverage for a military alliance against the Triarchy on the Stepstones. Saludos, thanks for the super chat, says, how old is everyone now? I don't think it necessarily makes perfect sense how old everyone is at all times, because there's been multiple time skips and they don't always tell us how long the time skips were. I mean, this episode was 10 years after the previous episode, but I wouldn't expect the ages to always make sense, because it's impossible to cast the multiple different actors, to look the right age at all times. I wouldn't worry too much about the ages, personally. Thanks for the super chat from Ugly Boy, who says, do you think that Joffrey's death in last week's episode contributed to Laenor's careless nature that we saw this week? Yeah, I mean, that's another thing that it would have been nice to see, like, in the gap, is, like, what was Laenor's reaction to his boyfriend's death? Like, I wonder if he's still grieving, Like, I wonder if part of why Laenor is sort of disengaging and sort of doing a lot of drinking and partying and fucking around, like, maybe that is partly because he's still, like, trying to get over the death of his boyfriend Joffrey, like, punched to death in front of him at his wedding. I mean, that would be so fucking traumatic. So maybe he's sort of still wounded by that and still in the process of getting over that, in the same way that Viserys is still wounded by the death of Aemma, Thanks for the super chat from Blackwater Bron, who says, how does dragon claiming work for the children? Yeah, well, sometimes a dragon egg hatches in their cradle and they bond with the hatchling, but sometimes the egg doesn't hatch, or sometimes they aren't given an egg in the cradle. So sometimes they can claim a dragon when they're older. You just sort of approach the dragon and hang out, maybe give it some snacks. It's like a first date with a dragon, and sometimes it goes well, and sometimes they become bonded. Sometimes it doesn't work out that way. There are lots of Targaryens who never bond with a dragon, like, most of King Jaehaerys's children, or his daughters specifically. So, we don't know a lot of the details. I mean, it's interesting, like, there are some examples of people with Valyrian blood later on who fail to bond with a dragon one way or another. So it can go a few ways, and, like, yeah, it's not very fleshed out in the book how exactly that usually happens, so we're going to see more. Thanks for the super chat from Elliot, who says, is Laena/issue heir to Driftmark? Yeah, who is the heir to Driftmark? So currently, Lord Corlys Velaryon is the Lord of Driftmark. He's quite old, like in the books especially. Corlys is an old man. He's like 60 or so around now, I think. So after he dies, Laenor, so I guess Laenor is currently the heir to Driftmark. And since Jacaerys Velaryon is going to be the heir to the Iron Throne, I suppose Lucerys is currently the heir to Driftmark because he's the son of the son of the son. But I guess you might also make an argument that if Lucerys is, he's going to be heir, second in the line for the throne, maybe Baelor or Rhaena could inherit Driftmark instead. But what about Vaemond? Maybe Vaemond and his children might have a claim to Driftmark. So, like, normally, like, primogeniture, it's the eldest son. So, like, I think it would be Lucerys. But yeah, that is a worthwhile question. Who is the heir to Driftmark? Inheritance in all its ways are very important here. Thanks for the super chat from Jesus, who says, Larys Strong is becoming one of my favorites. Can't wait to see more. Yeah, I am curious to see if he's like a Greenseer with magic, or if he's just got a lot of spies, because it's still like an open question, like how does Larys know what he knows? I mean, Larys did say that, like, he doesn't know what happened in the conversation between Lionel and Viserys. So Larys doesn't know everything, he has his limitations, but, it's interesting to see he's got these minions now. Like, Larys has this Cicada brooch, which is like his personal symbol that he puts on these prisoners, and he took the tongues from these prisoners. Like, Larys said, hey, like, I will save your life if you let me cut out your tongue, and if I use you as my personal arsonists to kill my father and brother at Harrenhal. So Larys has his minions now, and that's very similar to Varys's little birds, because Varys and Illyrio, in the books at least, they have all these child spies called little birds, and they take the tongues from these little birds, at least some of them, and they also teach them how to read and write, and so they're like these elite child spies that Varys and Illyrio use. So I think that's similar to how Larys uses these people. But it's like, yeah, it's still an open question, like how Larys knows what he knows. He might be walking into the mice. Who knows? And yeah, why is it cicadas? Why is the cicada Laris's symbol? Interesting. And yeah, it doesn't make sense to put the cicada badge on his secret minions, but I think that's just for the viewer's benefit. Yeah. Thanks for the super chat from Christian. Helena Targaryen, I think, may indeed be a dragon dreamer. She might have some of those prophetic visions. Thanks for the donation from Slevin Kelevra, who says, I think I would like to see an anthology series in the world of Ice and Fire with different episodes depicting different eras, like Valyria, Yin, etc. Yeah, well, they're talking about House of the Dragon potentially becoming a anthology series covering different eras, so that might happen. Thanks for the super chat from Wealth Wolf, who says, what do you want to see in Fire and Blood Part 2? Melis Blackfire would be cool. Yeah, so like George R. R. Martin, in typical George R. R. Martin fashion, he has written Fire and Blood Part 1, and Fire and Blood tells the complete story from Aegon the Conqueror all the way down to the current conflict. And Fire and Blood does tell the full story of this conflict with Rhaenyra and Alicent and whoever else. It does tell that full story, but then it stops after that conflict. And there's a Fire and Blood Part 2, which George Martin says that he's going to write to cover the next 130 years or 170 years, 130 years between the end of Fire and Blood Part 1 and then all the way up to the main series. George Martin says he's going to finish the rest of Fire and Blood, just as he says that he's going to finish the rest of the main Song of Ice and Fire series, and says he's going to finish the end of Dunk and Egg, so it remains to be seen if he will finish any of those things. Personally, I would love to learn about Summerhall. Like, I think George plans to finish Fire and Blood Part 2 after he finishes the Dunk and Egg series, because Dunk and Egg will have Summerhall in it. So I want him to finish Dunk and Egg first, and then to write Fire and Blood. Because like Dunk and Egg, we will learn about the Blackfires, we'll learn about Summerhall, we'll learn about all this, the most interesting parts of that era. And I want to learn that through Dunk and Egg's eyes before I learn it through the Maester's eyes, you know what I mean? Thanks for the super chat from Waffles, who says, unlike in GOT, no one uses the Night's Watch as a threat for punishment. It's probably still an honor and not a punishment. Not quite, because like Lucamore Strong, who had sex despite being in the Kingsguard, he was sent to the Wall, and I don't think that was a favor. I think the Wall is sort of a punishment, but it's probably more honorable than it was. I mean, it's like, you know, in the Dunk and Egg era, like Bloodraven gets sent to the Night's Watch in golden fetters, and there's like a big honor guard, and I think some of his Raven's Teeth join the Watch. So I guess you're right that I think the Night's Watch is a bit more honorable around these eras, but I think it's still a punishment to be sent to the Night's Watch. Thanks for super chat from Zaverna, who says there's a shot of Daemon hugging his daughters. Yeah, I mean, there have been a bunch of cutscenes. I've seen a bunch of things. There also was an image of Harwin and Rhaenyra together in a shot that wasn't in the show. I really want the Blu-ray to come out so I can see all the deleted scenes, you know? I feel like there's some very interesting deleted scenes in this show that we didn't get to see. Thanks for the super chat from Andre, who says that Alicent is mostly motivated by paranoia that her children will be murdered if Rhaenyra takes the throne. Yeah, Alicent is trying to protect her kids here. She's trying to protect her weird-ass kids. And Otto told Alicent that Rhaenyra will try to kill Alicent's children because Alicent's children are a threat to the claim of Rhaenyra's children. And I think that stinks of, like, self-fulfilling prophecy. Like, Otto spoke as though war was inevitable, and there's nothing they can do but prepare for war. If Otto had instead said, hey, Alicent, it's really important that you become friends with Rhaenyra. It's, like, intermarry. Like, marry Helena to Jacaerys. Like, do everything you can to get along. Like, chill. Everything will be okay. Maybe Alicent would have followed that advice, because Alicent does listen to her father so much. Like, Alicent is so influenced by her father. I mean, he is why she hooked up with Viserys in the first place. I think Otto telling Alicent at this tender young age, in this emotional moment, that conflict is inevitable, you must prepare him for rule, I think that has a lot to do with the conflict that's brewing now. So Otto still has his shadow over this series, and if Alicent and Laris get what they want, it sounds like Otto may become Hand of the King again. So he may be back. Thanks for the super chat from Eric, who says, does the success of the series make you more or less optimistic about the Winds of Winter coming out? Yeah, so, I mean, George Martin has not finished the main Game of Thrones series yet. We still don't know what happens to Jon Snow and Tyrion and Daenerys in the books, because George has not finished the books. But we have been waiting for the Winds of Winter for more than 10 years, and George says, I'm gonna finish it, but he has not. I think that the success of House of the Dragon is probably... I think that probably makes it less likely for the Winds of Winter to come out, because George Martin has said that all of these TV shows that he's involved in distract him from the Winds of Winter, and he isn't really able to work on multiple things at once. So he has said that his shows are a distraction, and the more successful House of the Dragon is, the more spin-off shows there will be, and the more House of the Dragon there will be. So yeah, I think that if the show is successful, we are less likely to get the Winds of Winter, which is a real, talk about Faustian bargains. I think a lot of people would prefer the Winds of Winter, honestly, at this point. But, no one knows. Thanks for the super chat from GRV, who says, did you catch the reference to Ricalio Rindoon? Oh, yeah, maybe Laenor was talking about Ricalio Rindoon when he was talking about those Tyroshi people. Because, yeah, like, the situation in the Stepstones has evolved. Like, Daemon may have killed the crab feeder, but that has not ended all of the conflict that was going on there. So, like, now Dawn has joined the Triarchy against the rest of Westeros on the Stepstones. And there is also this guy called Ricalio Rindoon, who is this Tyroshi fellow who is fighting with the Stepstones, and he was instrumental in, like, pushing the Westerosi out of the Stepstones. And yeah, like, the Tyroshi have flamboyant dress, and so yeah, I guess that was who Laenor was talking about when he talked about the guy with the blue beard and the crazy clothes. Thanks for the super chat from Quinevere and from Tanya, who says, how do you get these clips and pictures up so fast? You even speak so fluidly while getting it. Well, practice helps. Thanks for the super chat from Ash, who says, love how Viserys clings to his long Targaryen hair after he's gone mostly bald. Kind of the opposite of Tywin's no half measures head shave. Viserys is all about those half measures. Damn, I totally agree with you, Ash. We get so many great fucking smart comments from you guys. I'm so grateful for this audience. You guys are so smart. Cause yeah, Viserys has this like wispy ass old man decrepit hair, which is a great contrast to Tywin Lannister, because Tywin in the books, he's got these glorious mutton chops, and he has no other hair because he shaved his head completely when he started going bald. So like, Tywin in the show, portrayed by Charles Dance, he is sort of balding, whereas in the books, the moment he started going bald, he's like, fuck it, I'm doing the full Bruce Willis, I'm cutting all the hair off. He still kept his glorious mutton chops. But yeah, like, that shows a lot about Tywin's character. Tywin is decisive. He gets shit done. He doesn't fuck about. He like makes a decision and he cuts it. It is Arrakis teaches the attitude of the knife. It is finished because it ends here. Whereas Viserys is all half measures, as you say, Ash. Viserys is all these like awkward compromises that make nobody happy. He doesn't totally put his foot down with Rhaenyra or with Alicent or with anyone, and it allows everyone to walk over him. And no one enjoys that gross-ass hair, Viserys. Like, either cut it all off, or get a toupee, or wear a hat. Like, just make a decision. Shit or get off the pot. That's what Tywin was always able to do. Even in the end, he did shit. Not get off the pot. Okay, that's a tortured metaphor. Let's move on. Thanks for the super chat from Tay, who says, do the books go into detail about Rhaenyra's relationship with Harwin? Do they actually like each other? Or did she know she needed to make kids soon? The books do not go into detail about any of the relationships, because the book Fire and Blood is just a history book that gives a very sort of brief summary of what happened, and it has like unreliable narrators where we're not even sure whose version of the story is true. So Hot D has to flesh out all of the relationships. I like your implication that like maybe part of why Rhaenyra had a relationship with Harwin was that it was just like physically not possible for her to have children with Laenor. Maybe Laenor is infertile. Or maybe Laenor is just unable to get Rhaenyra pregnant because he's not sexually attracted to Rhaenyra. And, there is that idea, like, in the TV show, Renly had a relationship with Loras, and Renly was gay. And Marjorie, at least in the show, was saying, like, well, that's fine. You can still get me pregnant. We'll just, like, have a threesome. Like, Loras can get you started, and then you can finish with me so that you can get me pregnant. Maybe Laenor refused to do something like that with Rhaenyra, understandably, So maybe if Laenor was like incapable or just refused to get Rhaenyra pregnant, maybe that might be part of why Rhaenyra gets pregnant with Harwin, because she's like, well, I need kids, and if my husband isn't going to impregnate me, I guess Harwin will. I think that's an interesting take. I don't think that's what's going on. Like, I think that Rhaenyra has sexual desires. Like we see how attracted Rhaenyra was to Daemon. We saw how attracted she was to Criston. She had a sexual awakening. She has desires that she wants to be fulfilled. And she happened to do it with someone who had dark hair, and obviously, was the father of her bastards. I feel like Rhaenyra could have chosen her lover more selectively. Like, if Rhaenyra had hooked up with just some Valyrian, like, if Rhaenyra hooked up with some Velaryon guy who might give her blonde children, that might have been a smarter choice. I feel like Rhaenyra could have been a little bit more discerning, but, love does what it does. Thanks for the super chat from Fridge, who says, the actor switch was great. Alicent looks just like older Alicent. Rhaenyra looks just like older Rhaenyra. Yeah, I agree. I think that the actors do look a lot like their younger counterparts. Everyday Milo says, did Larys bang Alicent, or is Sir Criston banging Alicent? I don't think anyone's banging Alicent, except maybe for Viserys. I think that, like, part of the whole reason for, like, the Alicent-Criston relationship is that Alicent and Criston are both like, we are the people who follow the rules, unlike that slattern Rhaenyra who breaks all the rules. Like, Criston is committed to being a Kingsguard. Alicent is committed to her marriage with Viserys. And both of them feel kind of trapped in those constraints, but they still internalize them and make them their identity. So I don't think Criston is fucking anyone. I think that there probably is a bit of a forbidden romance vibe that they could maybe do with Alicent and Criston. I don't think they're having sex, no. Larys banging Alicent. I mean, it was interesting, the sort of like candlelit dinner that we saw Alicent and Larys having in this episode. There is, I mean, certainly an intimacy between Larys and Alicent for sure. There might be a little bit of a romantic undertone there, but like, I think they are pretty strictly business, Larys and Alicent. Larys provides Alicent with information and occasional murder, and Alicent provides Larys with, political status and station and protection. So, but I think those are worth thinking about, and it would not be crazy, I don't think, if there was some kind of a romantic or sexual connection of some kind between, like, Alicent and Criston or Alicent and Larys. Because, Alicent, for all of her repression and for all of her rules, like, she's a flesh and blood person who has her own desires as well, I would think, and I'm not sure Viserys is quite satisfactory. Thanks for the super chat from Mix Sims, who says, wouldn't marrying the kids prevent what Otto warned Alicent about, her children being at risk? She's choosing hate instead. Yeah, I agree, Mix. Yeah, because, like, if Alicent agreed to marry her daughter Helena to Rhaenyra's son Jacaerys, like, yeah, that probably would go a long way to preventing... Where's the bloody family tree? That probably would go a long way to preventing potential conflict between Rhaenyra's sons and Alicent's sons. So yeah, I agree. Like, I think Alicent did quite a selfish, spiteful thing in refusing to make that marriage, because I think that potentially could have prevented a lot of conflict. So I do see Alicent as, like, villainous in this episode. Like, she's putting her personal spite over the stability of the realm. And I think she has understandable reasons for it, but I don't think it's the right call. And I think that Alicent's actor, Olivia Cook, said as much in a recent interview on Entertainment Weekly. She was saying that, like, Alicent does despicable things and she doesn't try to defend them. So I think Rhaenyra makes terrible decisions as well, you know, like hooking up with Harwin, but I think that Alicent comes across more as a villain. And you can see how Otto is kind of behind that in a lot of ways, I think. Thanks for the super chat from Khalid and from Ikrain, who says, dragon eggs. Yeah, it's not super clear who gets dragon eggs. Sometimes they put dragon eggs in the cradle, but not everyone necessarily gets them. I mean, it's possible that Aemond did get a dragon egg in his cradle, it just didn't hatch, and that's why he hasn't got a dragon. But I think we will learn more about what that situation is as we go along. Thanks for the super chat from A, who says, who do Laena's children marry? Good question. We may find out who Baela and Rhaena marry. Thanks for the super chat from Evan, who says, who's going to recognize Larys's sigil? True. Thanks for the super chat from Kaylee, who says, I can't help but see a firefly as the pin Larys gave the prisoners. I feel like it's a cicada, but yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what that pin is meant to represent. I'll be interested to see what kind of symbolism that's meant to be. I feel like it's a cicada, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe we'll find out. All right, we're going to end this live stream. We're going to take a brief look at the On the Next Episode preview. So if you would like to avoid seeing the preview of the next episode, you might like to look away now. But thank you, everybody, for so much for participating. Please like and subscribe. If you would like to buy a Alt-Shift-X t-shirt, you can do that at standard.tv/AltShiftX. You might also like to subscribe to the podcasts. There is an Alt-Shift-X podcast where there are some live stream VODs and interviews and stuff. Nothing new there at the moment, but there will be in the future. And you can also get all the Alt-Shift-X videos. All the new Alt-Shift-X videos are available in a audio podcast feed. So if you want to listen to Alt-Shift-X videos as a podcast on Spotify or whatever, you can do that. Links in the description. But yeah, let's take a look at the preview. Thanks for the super chat from TJ, who says, I like that Lionel and Harwin fled the storm and it resulted in them being killed. Yeah, we got a few storm analogies, didn't we? Because Corlys, in episode 3 or something, Corlys said, when you face a storm, you must go through it or around it. Whereas Laenor, his son, said, when you face a storm, you should run away. which I think says a lot about Laenor's personality versus Corlys's personality. Corlys is so direct, but Laenor is maybe you should run away. And I think that is sort of metaphorically what Laenor has done emotionally. Laenor has faced a lot of very painful emotional problems, like his boyfriend being beaten to death in front of him, and like his wife cheating on him, and him being gay in a heterosexual marriage, and just it's all too hard. So Laenor just sort of runs away and sort of indulges in drink instead. So yeah, I like the storm analogy. And yeah, like you say, Lionel attempted to run away from the storm. Lionel tried to secure the safety of his family by running to Harrenhal with Harwin to get him away from the danger of the bastardy coming out, but he did not account for the fact that his son Larys was a fucking kinslaying murderer, arsonist. Thanks for the super chat from Modest Tuner, who says, if Lionel had suggested Harwin court Rhaenyra, instead of suggesting the king accept the Velaryon proposal, it may have succeeded. Yeah, I mean, that's a good point, because Lionel told King Viserys on the hunt that you should marry Rhaenyra to Laenor Velaryon, and that's what Viserys did. He listened to Lionel. If Lionel instead said what Viserys expected him to say, which is saying that Rhaenyra should marry Harwin, if that actually happened, then we wouldn't have this bastardy problem. Or, hell, maybe if Rhaenyra did marry Harwin, she would cheat on Harwin with someone else. I don't know. Maybe for Rhaenyra, half the appeal is breaking the rules as an act of defiance, But anyway, I think that, if Lionel said you should marry Rhaenyra to Harwin, I don't think Viserys would have listened. In that moment, his whole issue in that moment was that everyone was acting out of their own self-interest. And if Lionel also acted out of his self-interest, I don't think Viserys would have, made him hand. Thanks for the super chat from Eric, who says, has the show personally recharged you about analysing George's books, even with the gap in the main series? I suppose you can only think about the Tattered Prince for 10 years. Well, we could think about the Tattered Prince for a few more years. I was going to say, because, we went to Pentos, so we met, the Magisters of Pentos, and we mentioned how, the Prince of Pentos is this ceremonial position who, nominally is in charge of Pentos, but really the Prince of Pentos often gets ritually sacrificed when things go bad in Pentos. And there is a character called the Tattered Prince who was going to become the Prince of Pentos. And Tatters decided, you know what, I don't want to be the Prince of Pentos because the Prince of Pentos gets sacrificed often. So there is this guy in the books, Tattered Prince, who just runs off and starts a sellsword company instead of being the Prince of Pentos. And Tatters tells Daenerys, I want Pentos. I want to take over Pentos. And so there's a lot of speculation in the main series of books that Daenerys might burn Pentos and give Pentos to the Tattered Prince, if Daenerys finds out that Illyrio in Pentos lied to her and manipulated her, supporting young Griff instead of supporting her. But that's a whole other story, isn't it? Is there anything else important that we should say that we haven't said? I think we've covered most of it. Oh, actually, well, one important thing is that, so, last we heard, Laena Velaryon was not single. Laena was to be betrothed to the son of the Sea Lord of Braavos. That's what they told us a few episodes ago. And in the books, they actually resolved that. Because after Rhea Royce dies, Daemon makes a social call. He visits Driftmark, he visits High Tide, and he drops in and he meets Laena Velaryon's betrothed, the wastrel son of the Sea Lord of Braavos. And Corlys kind of hates the guy who his daughter is betrothed to, but they've been betrothed for so long that Corlys has no honorable way to get rid of this kid. So Daemon just insults the son of the Sea Lord of Braavos. He insults Laena's fiance until he forces him to challenge Daemon to a duel, and then Daemon kills Laena's betrothed in a duel. And then after he kills her betrothed, he marries her. So there is actually a story behind how Laena and Daemon got together. And it kind of fits with how they portray her in the show, because Laena seems attracted to Daemon's sort of dangerous, dashing, dragon riding, action man, vibe. So maybe Laena and Daemon fell in love over the lifeblood of her betrothed, her Braavosi betrothed. So there is a story to that in the books. All right, let's have a look at the preview, and then we'll end the live stream. So, credits roll, and then on the next episode, we see Rhaenyra. Your subjects must fear you. Uh-oh. Bit of ruthlessness implied here. There's a dragon's gullet. Maybe Aemond is trying to claim a dragon. Fire is such a strange power. I mean, the metaphor of fire with Targaryens, it's always about the destructiveness of the Targaryens' personalities and of their dragons, and sometimes they're mad and they're indiscriminate, and innocent people get hurt. Someone stole Vhagar. I wonder who stole Vhagar. Well, there's several people who want dragons. Rhaena wants a dragon, and Aemond wants a dragon, so I wonder who will claim Vhagar. There seems to be some kind of a fight going on here between... Is that Daemon killing a dude on the stairs? Looks like it. Laenor is fighting someone. I guess that's Carl Corrie. We're in the spoiler zone now, by the way, so I guess we can talk about it. It looks like this is going to be the... spoilers. It looks like this is going to be the death of Laenor to Carl Corrie, which is a sort of a mysterious moment in the books. It'll be interesting to see who's responsible. So this looks like the eye for an eye incident. So, spoilers, we're going to see Jacaerys and Lucerys and Joffrey, well, not Joffrey, I suppose, just Jacaerys and Lucerys get into a fight with Aemond. And Aemond, spoilers, is going to have his eye cut out by, I think it's Lucerys. And that's going to enrage Alicent and Rhaenyra. So, so much for a marriage between them now, huh? this is when, the blood starts flowing between the boys and the blood feud really starts being inherited by the next generation. What is going on here with the grunting and scream? I guess it looks like Baela and Rhaena get caught up in the fight between Jacaerys and Lucerys and Aemond. Maybe they get involved. I mean, yeah, I guess that's what they're saying. Like, someone stole Vhagar. Like, maybe they because, Aemond goes down to try and claim Vhagar, and that's when he gets into a fight with the Strong Boys, with Rhaenyra's sons. So, yeah, maybe Rhaenyra and Baela get involved here as well. Yeah, that looks like the incident there. Daemon is back in town. He's newly single again, and so is Rhaenyra. Daemon and Rhaenyra both single and ready to mingle. Otto comes back. He's the Hand of the King again. We can see the Hand of the King pin there. Larys looking absurdly sinister. Like, one of the things that they did with Littlefinger is that, like, Littlefinger in the books is very subtle and mysterious, whereas Littlefinger in the show is like, I'm a villain. Like he just loses all subtlety in the show. I hope they don't do that too much in the show. I hope that Larys still has a little bit of subtlety, a little bit of ambiguity to him. I don't want him to be like an obvious villain twirling his mustache. Vhagar getting claimed by Aemond. I love how fucking weird and saggy Vhagar is. She's an old murder grandma. She's an old nuke that Aemond has now claimed. And what on God's good earth is Aemond gonna do with that dragon? Alicent is mad about the one-eye incident. Is that Otto with Aemond? That's interesting. Why is Otto manhandling Aemond? Is he trying to stop him getting Vhagar? Is everyone trying to stop him getting Vhagar? So, Otto's back, and so I guess Otto will be once again pressuring Alicent into opposing Rhaenyra, so that can't be good. Yeah, he's Hand of the King again. And it looks like we get a wonderful confrontation between Rhaenyra and Alicent. Now they see you as you are. So the conflict is really starting to come to a boil now in the year of the Red Spring. So it's going to be really cool seeing this burst out. I guess this episode was sort of a introduction to the new cast members. I mean, we did also have, the death of Lena and so on, but it was more of and the death of Lionel and Harwin, but that's a relatively low body count as far as House of the Dragon is concerned. So I think that things may get only more bloody from here. Thanks for the super chat from AOE, who says, your weekly House of the Dragon videos are the highlight of my week. Thanks, AOE. Thanks, Ethan, who says, thanks for the content. Wes Pucci says that Preston Jacobs will finish TWOW. Yeah, the YouTuber Preston Jacobs does have a... he's decided that since George Martin isn't writing The Winds of Winter, he and his audience are going to write it themselves. And Francisco says, love your intricate videos on Song of Ice and Fire. Thanks so much for all the kind words, folks. All right, we're going to end the live stream now. Thanks so much for participating. We're going to make a House of the Dragon Episode 6 Explained video, which is going to come out around Friday or Saturday. So like and subscribe. Check out the podcasts, check out the merch, check out all the stuff in the video description linked below. And see you next time. Thanks, guys. Cheers.